Hopefully now we should have audio. So, alrighty guys, let's jump in and start exploring. That sounds like yesterday's live stream. All right, so let's get cruising on this week's content. We actually have a bunch of things that we need to go over this week. So let's just kind of jump in and get our hands dirty. All right, so I've gone to renderography.com and I've pulled up, let's just pull up the creating relationships in Modo. This is what we're going to be focusing on this week. All right, and this week is all about understanding the basic animation system of Modo and the process of creating our first rigs. Hold on. That sounds like yesterday's live stream. All right. So there is a delay. There is a delay. We actually have a bunch of things that we need to go over this week. So let's just kind of jump in and get our hands dirty. Hold on. Okay. All right. So I've gone to RenderOgraphy. There's like a 60-second delay, so we got to listen to that for like 60 seconds. Just bear with me. I'm still working at all the kinks. There's some kinks in the system, okay? All right, here's my easy basic solution. Process of creating. There we go. Easy solution. Let's turn the audio off. What? Okay, let's not listen to the live stream during class. It's going to be incredibly distracting, but entertaining for the people over in the lab. Apparently, they're like watching it over in the lab right now, and they watched it yesterday in the lab. So I'm like a YouTube superstar all of a sudden, which is good. That's what we're doing this for, right? That's what we're doing this for. So in the future, if you're like homesick, you have no excuse now. Okay, you can watch the live stream on YouTube if you're missing class. And FYI, I mentioned this last week, but if you're in class or if you're just aware of the earlier live streams, YouTube's going to save and archive this live stream to my channel, okay? And once I have a video in each one of the playlists, I'll start publishing the playlists to our course website, so it'll be very, very easy for you guys to find the content, okay? Yeah? Good? All right. The joys of teaching in classrooms that are inches away from each other. Okay, so this week we're going to start talking about the animation system inside of Modo. Now I know some of you guys have some experience already with animated in Modo, so today's conversation is just going to be a nice general overview of the system of getting things to work, okay? We're going to be working on a really easy, fun project. It's going to be an animated chain. I've already noticed by looking around the room that a number of you guys have already previewed the final example. Through this project, we're going to get a good understanding of the animation system, but we're also going to start looking at how to connect all these different items together and create our first rig, okay? Because over the next couple of weeks, we're really going to start to explore the rigging system in Modo and get a nice understanding of the really cool, powerful rigging tools and how to connect all these elements together. So today is all about making relationships, okay? Now don't worry, I'm not going to ask you. Wow, that's distracting. What is going on next door? Holy moly! Is it a class?
It looks like a cat video.
A cat video.
On the screen.
All right. Was it a class? I hope it's for good reason. Just real quick, let's just roll through the homework expectations so we're all on the same page, okay? All right, so homework, if you look at homework, the animated chain, we'll go through this again towards the end of class just to remind everyone, but this is basically what we're after, okay? Just a very simple animation where you're going to animate a chain. Now, each one of these chains is going to be, or each link in the chain is going to be an individual item that you're going to have to animate and manage, okay? More on that later. Yes, sir? Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So if you look at, if you look at the resources section in this week's stuff, I've given you access to a number of things. So here's resources, okay? So here's the chain model file. So if you haven't downloaded and saved that file to your hard drive already, please do so. This is the model file that you have to use for this assignment. In it. Oh, the link's broken. Okay, I'll fix it during a break. Okay. I'll figure out what's going on. And I'm sure it's just my butterfingers. Actually, I'm almost 100% sure it was just my butterfingers when I was entering in the URL for the link itself. I've also uploaded 3 new videos. These are brand new videos that directly address all the stuff that we're going to talk about in class today. So please make sure you bookmark and use these 3 videos in the video section as reference in addition to the live stream content that you'll have access to. And then as always, here's the links down at the bottom that I always kind of give out in the first week of instruction here in our production classes that will help you if you need to get some more help or to buy an educational license of Modo. All right, questions, 10,000-yard description. Yeah, so yeah, I'll fix the chain model file during the break and get the link working. Which brings us to the next bit. Let's go into D2L real fast. I've gone ahead and activated D2L for this course. Here we go. This web page is not available. Awesome. Reload. So I want to make sure I'm still logged on. Okay. Awesome. Is anyone else able to jump into D2L? So it's just me. Okay. If you look on the content section on D2L, it should be up in there. I'll make sure the link on renderography is broken by the time we walk out of class today. Okay. So I'll fix that. Alrighty. Hey, Chevy, come on in. Just getting started. Welcome back. Okay. All right. Let's get back to it. Okay, I told you not to do this, but could someone please just triple check my live stream to make sure I got audio? That would help. Mr. May, since I know you still have it open. I do, very much so. But can you hear the audio? No, it stopped. The audio stopped. I just heard "Hey Chevy," and we have audio somewhere. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure because I did want to make sure it wasn't completely destroyed. All right. This is such a weird moment. I was talking with my wife last night, who helped me out. She actually watched the live stream yesterday to make sure it was working, which is good. I really appreciated that. But when I got home from work, the first thing I was like, I want to see the live stream. I want to see exactly how it worked. And it's such a weird kind of experience listening to yourself on YouTube for hours on end. It's just odd. All right. So I want to start off today by talking about the animation system inside of Modo. It's a little bit different. And if you're used to animating in 601, animating items in 701 has been enhanced. I wouldn't say it's different. I wouldn't say it's too radically different, but there are some subtle changes in the animation workflow that we need to bring to the surface. So the first part here is going to focus entirely on how to animate in Modo. Okay? So let's jump over the animation tab. I've just created kind of a unit primitive teapot inside of my scene. So if you'd like to follow along, I would encourage it. And I'm just going to zip over to the animation workflow, okay, or the animation tab to bring open the animation workflow. Now, if you're used to animating in 601, you probably went, whoa, okay? They completely reimagined the animation workflow, or excuse me, the animation tab in 701. They added a lot of new tools, and they also changed the interface pretty significantly. And I mean pretty significantly. It is not at all what it used to look like in earlier versions. More specific, if you look down here in the bottom left-hand corner, we have some new abilities, which is kind of nice. This dynamic parenting we're going to talk about much later in the semester. You're going to love this, okay? This is a feature that I have honestly been waiting for a number of years. We're going to talk about parenting today, and you're going to see very quickly the limitations of creating a parent-child relationship. The dynamic parenting kind of takes off where that system has left off, and it does some pretty amazing things, okay? In addition, yeah, go ahead. So if you want to add a teapot to your scene, I just went to the top of the screen where it says Geometry, Unit Primitives, in Current Mesh, Teapot. All right. Excuse me. All right. One other thing that we'll be looking at, maybe today if we have time, but definitely in the future, is the ability to make motion paths. Okay. Now we were able to preview the motion path of any of our animated objects in 601. Now we can actually access that motion path and make changes to it. So if you're used to working with motion paths in other applications like After Effects, we now can do that in Modo, which is amazing, okay? I've always wanted to do this, okay? It definitely makes going through the iterations of animating in Modo a lot faster. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. It's pretty neat. We also have the ability to support audio now, so we can bring in audio files for like characters talking, things like that, or even just music and support that right here in the application as well. Kaylee, you had a question? So geometry, unit primitives. There we go. In current mesh, teapot. All right. So these are these tools over here are three very, very new exciting tools in addition to the Modo animation workflow. However, there's also this guy as well. This one we're going to look at a little bit later in the semester when we start creating more complex rigs. This animation tool allows us to expose specific channels within our control surfaces and our control rigs and manipulate those channels in a little bit more interactive, kind of animator-friendly environment. So that's exciting. I'm happy. I'm very happy about that. A lot of this stuff in the middle are things that we've had access to in the past, okay? They've just kind of brought a lot of those elements to the surface, like channel sets. Channel sets is new, but actors and actions and poses, those are elements that we were working on in 601. We'll see those again, probably starting around week 9, week 10 in this course. We'll get back to those because they're really, really neat. Basically, what actors, actions, and poses allow us to do is to save very, very, very specific keyframe information into a pose, okay? For example, if you've taken GCOM 400 or even GCOM 401, you know that the creation of a walk cycle, of like a 24-frame walk cycle, involves 5 major poses, right? And then you repeat those poses. Well, we can save those poses inside of this entire system and then access that pose at any time, okay? It's great. Once you see it in action, you'll go, whoa, this is really, it's actually very, very useful. Here's the pose tool. We're used to working with that inside of Modo 601. And then all of this stuff over here, we've had this before. They've just kind of changed the interface a little bit more, okay? They've exposed all the values and they've separated out the translation, rotation, and scale parameters into their own section, which is kind of nice, all right? This part, however, a little bit different, okay? Another addition to the animation window, which is kind of nice. We can very quickly create preview GL movies of our animations. If you're coming from another package or if you have a little bit more experience working in the animation world, this is making play blasts, okay? We'll see this here momentarily. It's pretty neat. Excuse me. These 2 buttons I want to draw focus to because for a while, when I first started working in the new animation window, I was really confused and I was missing some important elements. I was like, where's my item list? You know, I need my item list so I can go in and start animating all of this. Well, these 2 buttons down over here will extend the animation interface to bring to the surface some extra animation tools and palettes that we're going to need. For example, if I click that one, there's my item list. It's back in action. Okay, I click it again. Boom, it goes away. Click on that one, there's our graph editor. Click it again, and it goes away. The graph editor is something that we're going to get very, very familiar with and comfortable with in this course, okay? If there's 2 things that you're going to walk away from this course knowing how to do, it's going to be rigging, and you're going to have a nice, solid understanding of the role and the importance of the graph editor in an animation pipeline. So we're going to spend a lot of time in the graph editor. They've completely rewritten the graph editor, and specifically the interface for the graph editor, to make editing our function curves a whole lot easier. More on that much, much later. Okay? some good stuff inside of 701 for the animation folks. The animation window and the animation workflow got a lot of love in the most recent update. Other areas of the application were not as lucky. The animation guys got a lot of love. It was cool. And there's some legitimate good stuff in here. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about the animation process. Animating inside of Modo is not difficult, but it does require the understanding of the key principle. And some of you guys probably already know this principle, but let's just talk about it for a second. What exactly are we animating inside of Modo? Polygons, okay. That's usually where people go to. Oh, we're going to animate the polygons, right? Not so much. John?
We're going to animate the relationship of its spatial area or the object itself.
Kinda in kind of like an existential way. Yeah, absolutely. Frames. We are going to be animating frames, absolutely. Or we're going to be animating with frames, okay. Chevy? Information, absolutely. And that, yeah. Joints, for sure. And what this all gets distilled down to, and you guys are right on many different levels, but what we're physically animating is an item. And more specifically, we're going to be animating an item's center point, okay? The center point is the most important player inside of the animation system. How many guys have taken GCOM 390, our motion graphics class? So a couple of you guys. Inside of GCOM 390, we talk a lot about the importance of the anchor point, because the anchor point in many ways is truly what's being rotated, moved, and scaled within our scene. We can use that as a launching pad for understanding how we're going to work inside of Modo, because we're going to be animating an item's center point. So to go back what Jessica said earlier, are we going to be animating polygons? No, we're never going to be animating polygons. We're always, always, always going to be animating an item, okay? It's physically impossible to animate polygons moving from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. We can only achieve that result by animating an item. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's jump in here. Here's my little teapot. Fantastic. Let me just do a little Shift-A action here. Let's take a look at it. Okay. Now we're going to make the best animation known to man. I want to have my little teapot travel from the right side of the screen to the left side of the screen. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, we are going to be animating items. So which selection mode do we need to be on to get to our items? Or to be able to animate? Items, yeah, don't forget this, okay? People often, especially if you're coming from 402 or from 424, we've been working in edges, vertices, edges, and polygons for a long, long time. Items are things that we do every once in a while, but it's not like the bread and butter. In the animation world, items are the bread and butter for what we're going to be doing, so we need to make sure we're in item mode. In the current animation window, do you see the ability to change from vertices, edges, materials, and items? No, that's kind of gone, okay? It's gone. It's gone, but it's not forgotten, okay? It's not really gone, but it helps to understand some keyboard shortcuts, okay? The guys down at Luxology are assuming that if you're animating inside of Modo, you know the basics. You understand the differences between the component modes, vertices, edges, and polygons, and the item modes. And you've probably already have kind of mastered the keyboard shortcuts to select an item. Does anyone remember what the keyboard shortcut is to select an item? 5. Okay? Let me kind of reiterate this for a second. And I just realized I forgot to launch my favorite highlighter application. Okay. So check it out. Let's go back over into our model tab here for a second. And if you look very, very carefully, what we're talking about are these selection sets, okay, at the top of the screen. So these are the ones that we're used to seeing over in the model tab, and you see them in a number of places, but for the animation tab, they're gone. So commit to memory these 5 keyboard shortcuts. If I want to select some vertices, what key do I press? 1, right? Edges, 2. Polygons, 3. What's 4? Materials, and items is 5. And actually, there's a 6 and a 7, which we'll get to momentarily. 6 is pivot, and 7 is center point, and center point is critical. Okay, we'll come back to that momentarily. So kind of commit that to memory. It's going to help as we work inside the new animation window. Okay, here we go, back to the animation. So I'm going to hit the 5 key on my number pad to select my item. And here's kind of the nice visual reinforcer that you are in fact in item mode. Whenever you hover or select an item, 100% of the wireframe on that item is going to turn orange. Okay, very different from the component mode that we've been used to working in so far. For example, if I'm in vert mode, I'm only going to see just a couple vertices or whatever I select. In polygon mode, I'm only going to see the polys, but when I'm in item mode, everything is highlighted orange. So a nice kind of visual reinforcer that you are in fact in the correct selection set for this for animation. Now that we're in item mode, we're free to go ahead and start animating our object. Okay, the same transform tools that we're used to working in component mode are alive and kicking here in item mode. So we can absolutely still use move, rotate, and scale. That's awesome. However, there's a new tool. Well, actually, it's not really new, but it's been around. It's new to you guys, called item transform. Now, access your library of keyboard shortcuts for Modo. What's the keyboard shortcut for move? W, rotate, E, and scale, R. Now keep cruising down that row of keys. And eventually, your eye is going to land on Y. Why? Because it's awesome. No, bad joke, sorry. The Y key is the keyboard shortcut for item transform. And let me just pull it up, because this is kind of new, but it's really neat, okay? The item transform tool is really helpful in the animation workflow because it gives us access to all 3 of our basic transform commands in one tool. So in one tool, I can move, rotate, and scale. I get all 3 of those action handles showing up at the center of my item. So this is a handy dandy way of getting around and quickly working with our object. Okay, so this is where I want my teapot to start. Okay, and over a number of frames, maybe just over the course of a couple seconds, I'll have my teapot start on the left or on the right and travel all the way over here to the left. Okay. Now look very carefully within inside the animation window towards the bottom, and specifically the bottom right, to get some other visual cues as to what Modo is thinking about while you're doing it. The guys down at Luxology have brought these 3 buttons to the surface because truly they represent the location of this item within our 3-dimensional space. Now an item has some really important roles inside of Modo, okay? And an item, well, one of the things that makes an item special is that the computer is always going to understand its actual location, rotation, and scale values at all times, right? This is something that we didn't used to see when we were working in component mode, right? If we moved a set of polygons, it wouldn't tell us exactly within inside our 3-dimensional scene or where within our 3-dimensional scene that information was residing. We get all of that information here with items. So I know that this object is at 90.6 centimeters along the z-axis. And it's going to save all that, even if I was to drop the tool. Check it out. Let me hit the space bar to drop the tool. Okay, and I'm actually going to deselect this item. Notice that all of these channels in the bottom right-hand corner go dark. And then if I select it again, bam, all that information is still there. Case in point, let me show you again. If I was to rotate this, I've rotated it negative 91.5 degrees on the y-axis, and simply dropping the selection and then reselecting it shows pretty clearly that it's going to retain all of that item transform information. We didn't used to get this with components. We absolutely do gain this awesome feature with items. Okay, that's actually one of the aspects of working with an item that make it different from everything else. The computer, Modo, is fundamentally going to retain all of the transform information for that object. Okay, that's cool. We want this because we want this so we can animate within inside of Modo more efficiently. Since Modo is retaining all of the item transform, I can go back in and return this object to the origin of my scene just by restoring all the original values. So if I wanted it to go back to the center, I can just simply put a 0 in this in the Z transform channel and return my Y rotation channel back to 0, and bam, we've kind of reset this item back to its starting point. Okay, 0, and then 0 along the Y. Huzzah, there it is, rock and roll. Okay, now we've restored it. It's going to save all of this stuff, which is really kind of neat. But let's animate it. Since we know that all the item transform information is going to be saved and kind of calculated and remembered within the app, let's do something with it. So I've moved my teapot back over on the right side of the screen, and now I'm ready to start animating. A lot of people, they get a little confused and scared about the idea of animating inside of any application because they know what generally kind of is going on, but they're afraid of the technical side of animation in computer applications, okay? So let me kind of dispel some myth. Let's make it as easy as we can to understand how the computer is doing what it is going to do. This little value here, 96.9 centimeters along the z-axis, is going to be preserved in a keyframe. Okay, I need to save that location. What's a keyframe?
It's a point on the timeline where the data is saved.
I like it, and I think that's a great explanation, Alex. It's a point on the timeline where the data is saved. And I think for me, that's how my brain makes sense of what a keyframe is. It's just information. It's just data. Okay. In our case, we're going to place a keyframe on the transform. Okay. On the position value. We're going to place a keyframe on just this little chunk of data. Okay. Where we place that chunk of data shows up over here in our timeline. Okay. So a keyframe is just nothing more than just a representation of data in time. That's all it is. Okay. That's what a keyframe does. Just save some information. Whatever we tell it to have inside of that keyframe is going to be the information that's going to show up on our timeline. So let's make a keyframe real fast for this particular object. How many guys have animated in Modo before? A couple of guys. So how do we add a keyframe? A couple different ways. I like it. If you like to use your mouse, as I often do, clicking the circle next to the channel. See these little dots? They're all over the place. Those little dots represent a channel that can be animated. So by simply left-clicking on the little dot, that guy right there, we make a keyframe. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go back over here and click on that little dot, you can see that instantly it goes red. And what I'm talking about and looking at is that guy right there. Okay? See how it goes red? We now know that we have a keyframe on that point. Okay? And if you look over here in our timeline, we also get another visual indicator that a keyframe has been created. That guy right there, okay? Two different things, a red dot on the actual channel that's been keyframed, and then kind of a global, kind of white rectangle that shows up on our timeline that represents a keyframe, okay? So this is a specific representation of the keyframe, and this is global, okay? This is just showing us when on our timeline that keyframe has been placed. It doesn't give us any information as to what's been keyed or what value. So clicking that dot is one way of adding a keyframe. What's another way of adding a keyframe? Yeah.
If you had your position button, keyframe, dot next to it.
Yeah. Let's talk about it real fast. Okay. There's a lot of ways to add keyframes. The keyboard shortcut for infusing a keyframe onto your timeline is the S key. S as in September. We are now in September. Same as Maya. It's kind of an industry standard technique. Okay, our industry is standardized around very few things. The S key is one of them. Okay, the S key will allow us to add a keyframe. So it's not the K key. Every once in a while, a K is in kilo. Every once in a while, it's like K is the keyboard shortcut for keyframe, right? No, it's S. Yeah.
Is that the one that does all the positions?
So good. Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about the role of the S key within the process. I'm going to hit my undo key a couple times to remove the keyframe that I placed on the Z channel of the transform information. And now I'm simply just going to hit the S key. Okay, let's see what happens. S. Now, if you look very, very carefully, what showed up down over here in the bottom right-hand corner? Yeah, it's going to keyframe every single channel inside of our transform, okay? So it's going to keyframe all three position, rotation, and scale channels, okay?
Just for that item.
Just for that item, yeah. Just for the selected item, which is my teapot, okay? So the S key is a kind of a fast, global way of working with or for creating keyframes on any item inside of Modo. Do I like working with the S key? No. I don't like working with the S key because here's why. Here's my kind of global rule, and if you've taken an animation class with me in the past, you know my mantra. Mo keyframes, mo problems, okay? No, seriously, the more keyframes that you have to manage, the more problems you're going to have when you start to edit your animation. And that's a reality that all of us are going to have to face at any given time. We're going to have to go back and fix our animation, okay? You never get it right the first time. There's always, animation is an art form of iterations, okay? You refine. Every time you go back through your animation, you make it a little bit better, or you keyframe a different value, or you look at a different part of the character to ensure that that part is working the way it needs to work, okay? It's an art form of iteration. So I don't like just kind of globally blasting out keys because there's just more data that I'm going to have to manage.
Yeah, I get confused doing stuff like that, mixing it with single keyframes and then the S, the
Yeah.
keyframe. Then when you go back to edit it, all your graph editor stuff, all of them.
Wow, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. Yeah. My entire animation workflow is designed to make working with the graph editor easier. Because the graph editor is a conceptual environment. You'll see this in action next week when we start talking about the specifics of the graph editor. But the graph editor basically takes all of this information and plots it plots all of that data on what's called a function curve, okay? And it's very weird, it's very foreign to a lot of people, and it's rather difficult at the beginning to understand how the graph editor is influencing our animation. So the S key is going to make working in the graph editor just a nightmare. Okay, so I'm all about localizing the keyframes on the channels that I know I'm going to animate. So for example, I know I'm going to be animating maybe just the position values for this guy initially. So we've added some keyframes. Has anyone discovered or explored how to remove keyframes, how to delete keyframes from the mix? Yeah. Clicking on the radio button, this little circle adds a keyframe, but it also removes the keyframe too. Okay, so if you wanted to get rid of, like for example, if I wanted to get rid of all of these keyframes down here, I could just simply left click on each one of these dots. See how it goes from red back to gray. Red means there's a keyframe. Bonk, and there it is. Okay. Also, draw your attention towards the timeline. The keyframe indicator that was right there is now gone. Okay, so another great kind of enforcer visual aid that we've removed the keyframe that was in that moment in time. One other thing that's kind of neat inside of Modo is that we can animate just specific channels. We can animate every single channel as we just saw by hitting the S key, or we can localize it a little bit. Maybe we know that what we're going to be doing here is going to be animating just the position of our teapot. Okay? Now I don't know where my teapot's going to go, but I do know that it's not going to rotate, it's not going to scale. It's just going to move around. So one thing that we can do is that we can activate keyframes for the entire row, okay, by hitting that button. Okay, check it out. Now, if I hit the transform or the move button, there it is. Oops, that did everything. Hold on a second. It selects it, and there it is. So a little bit different from 601 to 701. Let me show you what we need to do here to make it work. Clicking on the little move button is going to select all the channels, and then hitting the red one will place a keyframe on all of the selected channels.
Or could it work the same way where you put W for the move and then press the button?
Absolutely, absolutely. Another way to select just all of those move parameters, let me hit undo to back up, is if we have a transform tool active. Okay, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. There we come on, deselect it. So if I had, let's say, item transform on, with the item transform tool turned on, you can see that all of these channels down here are selected. The background color for, behind all the radio buttons is yellow, meaning it's selected. So if I was to hit the S key, anything that was selected would get a keyframe. If I just have the move tool active, oops, excuse me, clicked off. If I just have the move tool selected, notice which channels downstairs are highlighted. Just the move ones. If I activate the rotate tool, just the rotate guys are now highlighted. Okay? So another great way to very quickly localize which channel sets you're putting keyframes on. All right. I think I'm going to go and just place a couple keyframes on that Z channel, as we did before. There we go. All right. Before we go too much further, let's talk about the 4 basic steps of animating inside of any application. And these are universal steps, and they're really kind of important. So write them down in your notes, commit them to memory, okay? You definitely want to access this kind of little nugget of information. Now, I can see from across the room that Chevy's using Evernote. I think that is a brilliant, brilliant idea, okay? If you look back on renderography.com, you'll see that in the labs section of renderography.com, I've added 2 links that I would encourage you guys to visit. Evernote's one. I love Evernote. I think there's no reason not to use Evernote. I can see people taking notes in class. Use Evernote. That way, it will always be saved to the cloud. You'll always have access to it. You can look at it on your phone. You can look at it on your tablet device. You can share your notes with folks in class. It really is the coolest thing since sliced bread. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. In addition, you're also going to be working with some very large files over the course of the entire semester. We're going to be doing full-blown renders at the conclusion of every project in here, okay? So you're going to be rendering a lot, okay? You're going to need some sort of cloud storage. If you don't like working with thumb drives, as I kind of don't anymore, I don't like thumb drives, okay? I lose them, I break them, they're slow. Some machines they just don't even work on, okay? So I'm all about cloud storage, and I have fallen in love with a service called Copy. It's very similar to Google Drive or Dropbox, just a million times better, in my opinion. Okay?
How much memory do you get?
15 gigs. 15 gigs for free. Yeah, it's great. It's really great. It's really great. So check it out. I would encourage both of those. I really would. Yeah, Dropbox, you only get like 2 gigs for free. And so it kind of makes it almost unusable for us in the media industry because all of our files are going to be huge. Copy gets us access to that pretty quickly. Gives us access to the file size we need almost instantly. It's just great. Okay. I'm done with my bandwagon. Back to Modo. So the 4 steps of animating inside of any application. The first step that we got to do is that we got to, before we do anything for Mr. Palmer, don't install the app. Okay. Yeah. I can see over on Mr. Palmer's screen that he very dutifully downloaded the Copy app. Don't do that for these machines. You want to do it for your home machine. Okay? There is a desktop application that will basically allow you to sync all of your files, just like Dropbox, on your home machine to the Copy service. Don't do that for these machines. It will cause nothing but problems. Okay? But you can use the web browser. You can upload all your files to the web browser. That would be the best thing to do. Okay? Yeah.
Establish first keyframe.
Yes. Back to the 4 basic steps of animating. Okay. Step number 1, and I've already done this. I've placed my playhead at the beginning of my animation, and the playhead is nothing more than just the representation of where in the timeline that you currently are. You can click and drag on that little white number down there. And you can change the location of your playhead. So what I'm looking at is that little white line right there. That's your playhead, okay? Simply left-clicking and dragging on it will change the frame that you're currently viewing. So step 1 is just to change your playhead to the first frame or the beginning of your animation. For me, frame 0 is going to be that moment. Step number 2, keyframe your object. I've already done that. I've already placed a keyframe on frame 0. For the Z channel on the position of my teapot. Step number 2. What's step number 3? Because this is usually where people get lost. What's step 3? Does anyone know from previous classes? Yep, you got it, Alex. Just move the playhead. Okay, you got to move the playhead first. Step 3 is to move your playhead to the end of your animation. So I think I want my little teapot to move across the screen over the course of 50 frames. So I've gone ahead and simply moved my playhead to frame 50, which allows us to start step number 4, which is to move our object now, okay, or item, excuse me. Thin white line. It was down here in our timeline, and I simply left-clicked and dragged on the number and dragged it over there. Let me show you. Watch my screen real quick, Jessica. Yours is turning green. Yours is turning green. Are you holding on a keyboard shortcut? No. You're doing left mouse button, not right mouse button. It's turning green. It shouldn't turn green. Okay, so I see what Jessica's doing. She's not clicking on the number, okay? She's not clicking on the number. What Jessica is doing is that she's clicking on the actual bar. Remember, that little white rectangle, this guy, right there, that's the keyframe, not your playhead, okay? What we need to do is click on your playhead, and let me zoom in real fast so you guys can see what's going on, okay? The playhead is the white number on the ruler part of your timeline. So we're kind of right where my mouse cursor is. That's what you want to click on to move the playhead. What Jessica was interacting with was the ability to move the keyframe. This is what she was doing. She was grabbing the white bar and doing that. Okay, that's moving the playhead in time, or the keyframe in time. We want to move the playhead.
That's scrubbing?
Yeah, that's often referred to as scrubbing the timeline.
Why
But
did it change to the Modo yellow now instead of white?
because I've selected it. Yeah, it went orange because I clicked on my keyframe. We'll come back to that workflow a little bit later today as we start talking about the dope sheet. Okay. Okay, now that I've moved my playhead to frame 50, I need to move my item to where I want it to go inside of my three-dimensional space. Okay, so I'm free to go grab this, move it over there. Now, before I hit the play key, let's look at what's changed inside my timeline. Let's zoom in, take a look at it, because we got some new interface elements in here that we need to talk about. If you look very carefully, our timeline has changed ever so slightly. Immediately above the ruler section of our timeline, we have that green bar. And that green bar is a nice visual reinforcer that animation has been created. This green bar tells us that the computer is now interpolating between two different data sets. So initially we're starting here, and whatever that keyframe value is being automatically transitioned to the keyframe value that's over here. So the green bar kind of shows the connection between those two different keyframe values, okay? So, and I just said something that probably you guys are going like, what? Interpolation? What is interpolation? It's nothing more than the process of the computer transitioning automatically between those two different data points, okay? Did I physically create that second keyframe on the right? Did I hit the little red button? Did I hit the S key? No. Modo defaults auto key on. So if you already have a keyframe established on an earlier frame, any subsequent keyframing is automatically going to generate a key. Okay? This is handy. It can get you in trouble if you're just kind of clicking around the interface and moving your timeline all around. You can turn it off, and I think it is this button. I very rarely turn it off. It's one of these two buttons, I believe, that turns auto key off. All right. I say keep it on, though. Generally, it's nice to have on. So let's play my animation. I'm going to drop my tool by hitting the Q key, which is the cool keyboard shortcut if you're not used to working with the Q key. Okay? You can hit the space bar or hit the Q key. Q is in Quebec. Qbert. Does anyone remember that game from the 80s? I'm dating myself. I used to love Qbert. Loved that game. It was so I was historically bad at Qbert. And if you don't know what Qbert is, it was a little game, a little cute character, had a big nose, a round body, and like just feet. And the whole idea of the game was you're supposed to like jump up this little pyramid thing. And there's other characters on the pyramid that were going to like attack you and like kill you and stuff. And I was historically bad at that game.
Is it the character from Wreck-It Ralph?
It was in Wreck-It Ralph, yeah. Yeah. A lot of my classic arcade games that I grew up with in the 80s made nice little cameo appearances in Wreck-It Ralph. What? That's right. Oh, I had totally forgotten about that. Like everything in the 80s had their own like breakfast cereal. Like I remember vividly having like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle breakfast cereal. And we don't have that. We're on like this whole like health kick now, which is a good thing. But I miss all of those like, really cool franchise breakfast cereals. How far we've come. Now everything is like, natural and organic and whole grain, blah, blah, blah. Just give me some like sugar-coated sugar bombs. That's all I want for breakfast, all right? and like the I always what are the yeah, you had the crunchy, like horrible marshmallowy things that like chalky marshmallows that were supposed to get soft in the milk, but never actually did. They were so like compact with their sugar that the milk never ever penetrated through to the inside and made it soft. And then the other pieces were like really kind of like chalky little flaky things that were horrible. I'm sure like all the problems that adults have today stem from the breakfast cereals that we had in the 80s, because it was probably pretty bad for us. Okay, let's check out our animation. Now that we've got a couple keyframes on our timeline, we can kind of get a better understanding of some of the other controls down in this part of the interface, okay? Because they've changed this a little bit. They've changed this. You're more than welcome to scrub the timeline, as John was suggesting. If you simply grab your playhead, the white number, and just interactively left click and drag, you can see what's going on. Animation is happening. Woo! All right. It's moving. However, if we want to see this animation in real time and let the computer transition between all these keyframes for us, we have to start exploring what I call the VCR play controls down here at the bottom. So they've changed this a little bit, okay? They've changed this a little bit. They've made it smaller to make room for some of the other things. But I think it's a nice interface, okay? They've simplified it a little bit. And they allow us to navigate around our timeline pretty quickly. I love having that gigantic play button. We didn't have that. The play button in 601 was really, really small. We can also do fast forward. We can jump to the end. We can navigate to a very specific key, or excuse me, a very specific frame within our timeline by going there. Okay, let's play my animation. Let me zoom back out here, and I'll play my animation. Boink! There it goes. Ta-da! Now notice that my playhead keeps going. Okay, it reaches that keyframe, but it's going to keep going all the way over here to the right side of the timeline. It's going to play 100% of the sequence frame range as it can. Okay, so there is a defined duration to all of our animations. We get access to that, and we kind of understand the sequence duration by looking at a couple different areas on the timeline itself. I'm going to stop my animation by hitting the play button again. And I just want to draw your attention to a couple different things on the timeline. You kind of get a good understanding of how long your timeline is just by looking at all the numbers on your timeline. I know it seems obvious, but people often kind of forget to do this, all right? Your timeline has a defined start point, okay? For me, the default, that defined start point is represented by that guy. Oops, wrong one. I like my little arrow. That guy right there, okay? That tells me what frame number is the first frame in our animation. And I usually change this because I don't like having the first frame of my animation be frame 0, right? That leads to some confusion, especially when you're working on a large team. If I was working with Chevy, for example, and if I was a supervisor and I told Chevy, hey, I want you to go fix frame 1, which frame would he go to if this was his timeline? I don't know what frame he would go to. Would he go to frame 0, which is technically frame 1? Or would he go to frame 1, which is technically the second frame? See where the confusion, this is just confusion rains down, okay? So we want to be able to control this. Same with the end, the end duration of our timeline. You get access to that, of course, you can check it out. I go way over here. Right now, I can see that the last frame of my timeline is 120, okay? Well, where do we change this? What if I only want my animation to be 50 frames? Or maybe I want the first frame of my animation to be frame 1 instead of frame 0. Has anyone kind of stumbled upon where we can change these values? Yeah, settings. They've buried this. It used to be on the surface in 601. It used to be on that top row, and you were just able to go in, boop, and change your sequence start and end pretty quickly. They've buried it in this settings button down here, this guy. So if you click on it, you get this pop over. Here it is, scene start and scene end, okay? This is the global duration of our timeline, okay? So I want to change my scene end to be like, I don't know, 60. And I want my scene start to be on frame 1. There we go. And we're on our way. Let me click off of this and zoom back out. And you can see that my animation has been updated. However, look carefully at the timeline. Specifically, look at, yeah. Where'd my keyframe go? Yeah, yeah. My initial, when I created that initial keyframe, it was on frame 0. Now I've gone in and I've edited my scene start and scene end to display to only have frames 1 through 60. Where's my keyframe? Yeah, it's still on frame 0. Point being, you want to make sure that you have your scene start and scene end dialed before you do any work, okay? The first thing that you want to do when you're working on any animation is explore your settings and ensure that all of this stuff is dialed before you start. Because if you animate your entire like epic 2-hour movie, and then have to go back in and change your settings, you're basically going to have to reanimate everything all over again. Okay? You're making more work for yourself. So think intelligently through this process and explore the settings before you start. Let's just look at a couple of them real fast. Okay? Of course, we have scene start and end. Current start and end, we're going to come back to in a minute. But these other two are really important for us. Okay? Play real time, always have that on. Always, always, always have play real time on. Okay? If you don't have it on, the computer is going to try to display all the frames within your sequence as fast as it can process it. Okay? So you're not going to get a good gauge as to the true speed of movement. Okay? So if you have like a really, really high-end machine that's got like a big graphics card, like the highest end processor, it might be able to process your scene animation at faster than the sequence frame rate. Okay? It might process all your frames at 40 frames a second instead of 24. Okay? So you're not going to get a good understanding upon playback as to the true speed of movement. Okay? So always leave play real time on. That's my tip. Time format, frames is just fine. If you're doing something for television, I do a lot of freelance work in the television industry here locally in town. So I often change it to SMPTE. Okay? This is the format that the television guys are used to working with, okay? I think for us in here, frames is just dandy, okay? I think in seconds. I don't necessarily think in frames. So being able to go in and change this is handy, is really handy. Let me show you what it looks like when we change it from frames to SMPTE timecode. Just the marker system on our timeline changes. We're no longer seeing individual little tick marks on our ruler for frames. We're seeing, we still kind of are, but how it's displaying that information is just more in line with the television world than feature films. Back to settings real fast. Let's put huh? Yeah, if you've taken GCOM 390 with me, we do everything in SMPTE timecode. Okay. We also have question, Jessica? I don't know. It's not the spacebar. Spacebar's drop the tool, right? Or change your selection set. So it's not spacebar. I'm sure it's out there. I've always hit the button. And then finally, we also get access to our frame rate in here. This is something that you absolutely need to make sure is dialed before you start animating anything. Okay? So just make sure all your settings are where they need to be before you start animating. Yeah. Not that I know of. Yeah, not that I know of. That would be a handy feature to have it like show up in like the corner down over here or something. Yeah, that'd be neat. That's a good suggestion. What was it? I didn't hear it. Forward slash. That's the one next to your braces key. Sean. I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. Nope. Yeah, so you will be changing your frame rate throughout the semester. Okay. Okay. Okie dokie. So.
That switching frame rates is just as easy. Like, it doesn't matter at what point you change it for the final render, right? Like, you got a customer that needs it at 30 frames, and you've been working on it at 24 frames. It's easy keystroke, right? For the final render.
No. Well.
No, or should you have already started?
You should have already started in 30.
Really?
Yeah, because all your timing is going to be off now. Your timing is physically going to be different. If you animate something at 30 frames a second, or let me rephrase that. If you animate something at 24 frames a second and they need it in 30, your animation is now going to be slower. Okay? So these are the settings. You need to dial your settings before you even throw down one keyframe.
Is that where the motion path is going to come into play to change that?
The motion path is only really going to influence the data values that were on the keyframes, not the timing. If you do want to change the timing, this is the place to do it. I wasn't necessarily going to jump into this yet, but since we're here, let's just talk about it, okay? The dope sheet is awesome. The dope sheet is a fantastic tool for us. I know it's a silly name, the dope sheet. I don't know why it's called the dope sheet, okay? It just is. It just is. I don't find it dopey. Well, in other applications, it's really dopey. In Modo, I actually really like it. It's a really good dope sheet, okay? It's kind of hidden, though, on the surface. You don't necessarily know that it's there, but you've been already kind of interacting with it on a very small scale. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The dope sheet is only going to show you keyframe information on a selected item. So I'm in item mode, and if I was to select my teapot, there we go. We actually already see the underpinnings of the dope sheet right above our timeline. And specifically what I'm talking about are these guys. Okay, this entire row, all of this basically, okay, that little green bar is the underpinnings of the dope sheet, okay? We get access to the full dope sheet by expanding that part of the interface. If I was to put my mouse cursor right there on the border between the two windows and pull up, check it out. Now we're seeing the full-blown dope sheet. And I made it really big to make it easy for you guys to see what's going on. But if you look very carefully at what's happening here, it's giving us keyframe information for the object that we have selected. This name, mesh, is the title, the name of the mesh item that I'm currently selected. So if I change this to like Pat's Teapot, it would say Pat's Teapot on here. Click on that arrow if you're following along, and you'll get even more information about what specifically has been keyframed. Now check it out. Now it's broken the dope sheet into all three of the respective transform channels, position, rotation, and scale. If we click on position one more time, we're going to get even more information about specifically what's going on. And now we can see that we have position keyframe information on just the position Z channel, okay? And you can see these little bars in the dope sheets represent keyframes. Yeah?
I don't have scale.
Say again?
I don't have scale. I don't know
I don't know why you don't have scale. Is your window pretty big? Well, that's weird. That's weird. Let me see. I'm curious. I've never.
teapot, and then I expanded it, and those are the only two I got.
Position rotate. That is
Did I,
weird.
because I never put a keyframe on
That may be it.
on that last
yeah,
one?
that may be it. Yep.
Since I only have keyframes on these two?
Yeah, and that's actually kind of what we want. We only want to see the information that's been keyed. I don't want to see all of the channels that have been that are available to us. I only want to see the channels that have keyframes currently on them.
What about that original zero keyframe too?
Yeah, so that's the challenge. The dope sheet isn't going to give us access to that zero keyframe. Okay, it's still off. We're only ever going to get access to frame 0 in the graph editor. Okay. Excuse me. And I don't want to go into the graph editor today, so we're just going to kind of undo all this stuff and just move forward. Okay. Now the dope sheet's really cool, not only because we get a better visual representation of what's been keyed and where that keyframe is, but it allows us to interactively move those keyframes along our timeline. Okay. It's really neat, especially when you're working with complex animations. If I wanted to make my animation happen faster, if I wanted to have the exact same movement, but to make it like twice as fast, what would I need to do to my keyframe?
Less time.
You got it. You got it. So where would I move my last keyframe? Towards 0. When the keyframes are closer, the movement's faster. So if I was to grab that position Z value, check it out, over here to like frame 25, now I've made that entire animation faster. Okay? So we have two different levels that we get to edit our keyframes. We can animate it on a per channel basis, like this. Here, let's do, to make it a little bit more obvious as to what I'm talking about, let's do this. I'm going to go through and I'm going to animate all of my let's just do Y rotation. I'll go over here and I'll just spin my teapot an arbitrary amount. Okay, so now I have two different channels within my transform that I've animated. Position along the Z and then rotation along the Y. Okay. The dope sheet allows us to control each one of these keyframing sets independently from the rest, which is pretty great. So if I wanted to make the movement of my animation happen slower, I can adjust just the position channel. So if we look at it now, it rotates, and then it stops rotating, and then it keeps moving. Okay. And then I can also do this. I mean, you just get to control where all of your keyframes are placed. Maybe I want the rotation to start halfway through. Now I can get it to do that. I like working with the dope sheet because all it allows us to do is to edit the location of the keyframes. So we're adjusting the timing of the movement, not necessarily the values of those keyframes. Okay? Questions? Everyone kind of understand? It's a powerful tool. You're going to like working in the dope sheet. More on this a little bit later today. Okay? And if you just want to get it out of the way, just shrink it back down. Okay? It's there, and then it's not. It's there. It goes away. Okay? It's kind of a plastic part of the interface. It's people often miss it because it's one of those things that if you don't know it's there, then you don't know it's there. You don't know to click on that part of the interface and make it bigger. Okay? Questions so far? Everyone good? All right, let's take a break, okay? Let's take a break. Check this out. And to help you guys, Bam, right on time. We switch back. Woo, how about that? That's exciting. Okay. During the break, I went ahead and fixed the hyperlink to our chain link file on renderography. So if you're on the website, please refresh your browser page before you try to re-download that asset. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, so refresh, then click on the link. So let's explore what we're going to be doing and what we're going to be working with for this week's homework file. I want to create a new project file here, and I'm going to open up that chain link file that I downloaded from renderography. Oh, excuse me, I need to unarchive it real fast. So there it is. Just going to double click on it. Huzzah. And there's our little chain link. Okay. So here it is. Now, I've only given you one chain link to work with. You're going to be making 10 of these and linking 10 of these chain links together. So let's talk about some of the moving parts and pieces that you're going to need to have kind of mastery on in order to complete this assignment. Okay. I mentioned at the beginning of class today that animation is all about the center point. We know a little bit more about how the animation system inside of Modo works, but let's really start to break down how things are being animated in our app. The center point holds all the keys to all the doors inside of the animation workflow in Modo. Okay, so let's check it out. By default, the center points aren't visible. Okay. They kind of hide it a little bit. And in other areas, they're definitely more visible than in the animation area. For example, the setup area, if we go to the setup tab, then, there it is. There's our center point. Okay, there's our center point. And specifically, what I'm looking at is that guy right there. That's the center point. Okay, the little white two-dimensional disc with the red, green, and blue arrow coming out from the center. Okay, that is the center point for this item. We're going to make a small little rig for our chain this week, and I can't reiterate this enough. Whenever you do any sort of rigging, you want to make sure you're in the Setup tab. Setup tab. We animate in the Animate tab, and we do all of our rigging and setup stuff, believe it or not, in the Setup tab. Okay, so keep that in mind. That doesn't mean we can't animate anything down here in Setup. If you look closely at this interface at the bottom, we still get a lot of the same controls, which is good. This is a best of. The greatest hits are down here in the bottom. Okay, I like that. This is actually really important for during the setup and rigging phase. At times, we'll want to produce small little animations to test to see if our rig is working correctly. So this does have a value in the rigging process. Now, if you haven't ever explored the Setup tab before, let me just give you a small, quick little interface, a little tour of the interface. It's pretty self-explanatory for the most part. For seasoned Modonauts, as you guys are, you know that this is where all of your tools are going to be. And we have a bunch of setup tools, a bunch of them. Okay. Some of these we'll talk about in this course. Others, I don't even know their functions. So there's a lot of stuff in this area. Okay. In addition to all of our setup tools, if you look towards the bottom, you'll see that this is where we'll be able to apply all of our dynamic effects and particles. Okay, so there's some other things in this environment that will allow us to craft some pretty cool and compelling animations. Now, the biggest detraction from our normal Modo interface, if you will, isn't so much like all of this stuff. This is just kind of our standard. All of this in here is just kind of our standard Modo interface. OpenGL viewport, nothing fancy here. The standard item list, this we know. But the new one is this bad boy down here at the bottom. This is the schematic view. We're going to talk a little bit about the schematic view towards the end of the semester, okay, when we start working with particles and dynamics. Ultimately, what the schematic view allows us to do is to work in a nodal environment. It allows us to hook together all these different parts and pieces to create a more complex machine. Let me show you just really, really quickly what this looks like, so at least you have a point of reference to the role of the schematic view in Modo. Let me open up my classic train here. Go. Okay. I rigged my entire train in Modo 701, and then down in the schematic view, you can begin to see the network of channels that I use to make this entire machine work. Okay? So these are all constraints, and some of them are overlapping on top of each other. These are all constraints. Some of them are items. Some of them, there we go, are locators. But this is the machine of my rig. We're not going to get to this until much, much later in the semester, but I just wanted to provide a point of reference to you guys as we work inside of the setup tab. Okay? Let me get rid of this, this model file. Close scene, don't save, and now we're back to our little chain link. Here's what I want you guys to do for this week. See how my mouse cursor changes when we put it in the border? Boom, just drag down. just ignore the schematic for a couple of weeks. We'll come back to it, okay? You can't delete the schematic viewport. We can minimize it by just making it smaller. Now we get a better understanding and a better view of our scene up top. All right. I'm also going to turn off the grid. Makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. What's happening, guys? Come on in. Literally just getting started. You haven't missed anything yet. Okay. So whenever I select any item inside of Modo, in the setup view, of course, we're going to see all the normal stuff that we're used to seeing, especially over in the item list and the properties tab. But here in the center, we're going to get, we're going to be able to see our center point. Let's talk about the center point just for a moment, okay? The center point is where all animation happens from. So whenever you rotate an object, my little chain link is actually going to rotate around the location of the center point. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Some people, they get confused when they're animating and working with items as to why their transform handles, their tool handles, are going to some weird, wacky place inside of our three-dimensional environment. Whenever you work with an item, your transform handles are always going to show up at the location of your center point. If your center point is offset from the model, it's going to perform oddly. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's just do a little quick animation here. I'm going to, of course, go into my timeline settings and put my start frame to 1, maybe my end frame to about 60. There we go. Now we're ready to rock and roll. And let's do this. I think I'm just going to have my little chain link here rotate along. Let's see. Which way am I going to rotate? I want to rotate along the z-axis. So let's get some. Oh, I forgot to mention this before. You can keyframe, of course, down here at the bottom, but you can also keyframe over here in the Properties tab. This is really kind of neat. Okay, if you look carefully over here in your Transform channels, in your Properties tab, you still get those familiar dots. These are the exact same interface elements as we were working with before. So if I wanted to keyframe animation along rotation Z, I just go boop, click on it, and now I have a keyframe. Okay. All right, and we can see that keyframe hanging out right down over here in my timeline. Let me shuttle my playhead forward to right about frame 50. And what was it? Z? Yeah. We'll just have it do that. All right, so there's my award-winning animation. Woo, fancy. But look what's specifically moving. Is the center point for this object moving? Yeah, that's what I meant. It's rotating, right? Yeah, it's not moving. It is rotating. You're absolutely right. But yes, it is rotating, okay? In actuality, here's how my brain kind of thinks of it. In actuality, what's animating is the center point, okay? What you are physically keyframing is the center point. And that center point just happens to have some polygons associated with it. Our polygons look like a chain link.
So it's kind of like an item that's connected to the center point?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you're trying to make a hierarchy, the item is just the title for an object within the Modo universe, and then right below it is the center point. And then right below that, we have some polygons, edges, and vertices. Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
How do you add grid?
You had a what?
How do you add grid?
How do you hide the grid? Good question. So, one other thing about the Modo interface that has changed. In the past, hiding the grid required us to go into our viewport properties, right? So if you hit the O key on your keyboard, you open up your viewport properties. This has changed quite dramatically, actually. So we still get our standard drawing and control tabs in our visibility. And there it is right there under general visibility. I've turned off show grid and show work plane. We also get two new ones now. We get active mesh and inactive mesh. So we can independently choose how the computer, or excuse me, how the OpenGL viewport's going to draw active and inactive meshes now. Okay, so that's kind of nice. We get a nice kind of level of control that wasn't really available to us in 601. Can't see your keyframe. Let's see if we can help Austin out. Can't see your keyframe. Okay, I can't even see your playhead. Where's your playhead? Yeah, I don't know. Click on the ruler. Click on the timeline ruler. Ah, it's over here on frame 0. Okay. Click on like right there on 2. There it is. Okay. Now what I would recommend is that you rekey all this on frame. Did you already place a keyframe down? Yeah. I would rekey it. Yeah, there it is. Now it's on frame 2. Okay. Yeah. I did. Refresh your page. Refresh your browser page, and that should work. A couple other quick things about the viewport properties that's worth pointing out. They've made some really nice strides in this. If you remember in 601, if you moused out of this form, it disappeared, right? And it was the most frustrating thing on the face of the planet. You'd like accidentally go, oops, and the form would completely disappear. Well, they've gone away with that. My mouse cursor is now off of the form, and I can still change all the settings. Unfortunately, it now forces us to click. So there's an extra click in the process. This form only goes away until we click. Okay? Clicky click. Let me thinking of forms. They've also changed how the interface works ever so slightly. Something that I'm a big fan of. Check this out. Oops, excuse me. Of course, we can, if you look carefully at all these icons up here, if you start to expand your interface, all the icons that have a keyboard shortcut will automatically start to show those keyboard shortcuts now. Kaylee, what's up? I'd say about 50-50. Yeah. However, check this out. If you go the opposite direction, if you go all the way in, okay, this is kind of neat. It used to collapse that entire part of the interface, and it's like the only way to get that part of the interface back was to like restore your setup. It's kind of lame. Now what they've done is that if you collapse that part of the interface, you still get access to all that stuff. It just gives you all the controls, then a little flyout menu now, which is kind of nice. I like that. I like that a lot. I like that. So all the options are still there, just in a cool little flyout menu. Gives you more on-screen real estate, especially if you're working on a cramped monitor like a laptop. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice. Okay. All right. Back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay. So let's talk about the center point a little bit more, because I got a dorky animation. Let's talk about how we can move and manipulate our center points. Now, since the center point is an object inside of Modo, just like any other object, we can select it, right? Just the same way that we were able to select vertices, edges, and polygons, right? But if I was in polygon mode and I wanted to select a vertice, what did I have to do? Yeah, I got to change the selection set. We have to do the exact same thing for center points. We just can't grab them. We have to change the selection set to center in order to be able to manipulate the center point for this item. Now, to get access to the center point in the Setup tab, you got to make sure that the item is selected, okay? And there it is. Then you can see the center point in the middle of my little chain link, okay? At the top of the screen here, if you look carefully, okay, there it is. Whoops, excuse me, I apologize. There we go. So here's item, keyboard shortcut 5. Pivot is 6, and then most importantly, the center selection set has a keyboard shortcut of 7. That's a good one to remember, okay? I'll be honest with you, I very, very, very rarely use the pivot point anymore. The advent of the center point within the Modo animation system has kind of pushed the importance and the role of the pivot point kind of to the back burner. In early versions of Modo, the pivot point kind of served as the center point, okay? We really don't want to use the pivot point anymore, okay? So center point only, center point only. So let's change our selection set to centers just by clicking on it. There we go. There it is. And notice that all of the center points for all of the objects in the scene become active and allows me to just interactively select it. Now, it's kind of difficult to get a good gauge on whether or not you've selected your center point. Often the center points for your items are very, very small, and zooming in on them doesn't help because they're always going to maintain their exact same scale within the viewport. So if you think that zooming in on your center point is going to make it bigger on screen, it's unfortunately not going to do that. All right, I'll save yourselves the hassle of going, why isn't it getting bigger as you zoom in and zoom in? It is kind of frustrating. So just to make sure, just keep your a weathered eye on whether or not that thing is orange. Okay, like everything else in Modo, if it's orange, that means it's selected. Okay. With it selected now, we can manipulate it. Okay, check it out. I'm just going to activate the move tool. Same old good old-fashioned move tool, but looks what is being moved. Okay. The action handles show up at the location of the center point, and now I can change the location of my center point. Let's do this. Let's move the center point over here. Let's offset it. Whoops. Something like that. Oh, okay. Awesome. Q to drop the tool. Okay. And now I want to play my animation. Now let's see what happens here. Remember which direction my little chain link was rotating before I made this change? You guys remember? So if this was my chain link, okay, visual aid. This is my chain link before, it was just rotating like this around the center point, right? The center point was in the dead center of the chain link. Keep that in mind. I want to hit the play button again, and you're going to see how my animation has changed. Where's it rotating around now? Yeah, it's different, right? It's still rotating around the center point. The center point truly is the element that's been animated, but the polygons, you kind of get a different effect, okay? The polygons are now offset from the center point, and it's swinging around, okay? It's no longer looking as though it's swinging around itself. It's looking as though it's swinging around like a hinge, okay? All animation happens at the center point, okay? That's where things are going to be moved from, scaled, and rotated around, okay? That's the big picture idea in all of this, okay?
How do people get your center point?
So, like any other object inside of Modo, it requires us to select it first. So let's restore this to frame 1. Now I'm in the center selection set up at the top of the screen. FYI, if you're following along, you've probably already noticed that tapping the space bar will never get you to number 7. Okay? Another thing that I'm gonna help you guys out. I've seen people do that in the lab where they're tapping the space bar for like an hour thinking that it's gonna cycle up to number 7 and then start back at vertices. Yeah, it's not gonna happen, okay? The only way you get there is to click on the button or hit the number 7 on your keypad, or on your keyboard, okay? Yeah, so center selection set, and then simply with your mouse cursor, just left click on it, okay? Admittedly, it does take a little bit of dexterity to click on a small dot. It's something that even I battle with from time to time. You got to be very careful on what you're selecting. All right. I think they've made it easier in this version of 701. In 701, excuse me. In 701, they introduced a new kind of system for the back end. Specifically for the schematic viewport that's kind of like rippled to other parts of the interface, and it allows you to select like the interiors of objects. In the past, you had to like select just the border of the circle in order to select something. Now you can select the inside of it, and it will select that object, which is nice. Little things, I know it's the little things that you go, really? Why didn't you initially do this? But you know, whatever. Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay.
I'm still stuck on what's it selected?
Then you move it. Just move it. Hit the move tool. W. Hit the move tool and you're on your way.
Oh, so the little three-prong thing, the axis thing, that's just simplifying the things. That's the center point.
You got it. You got it. And the center point has 2 different channels that are important. Location, okay? That's an important element that the center point's going to look at. But also orientation. I can rotate my center point. Do you want to do this? Not really, okay? You're going to have to from time to time. When we get into characters, this is something that is important, okay? But generally, it's something you want to try to avoid doing at all possible, okay? If you want to change the orientation of something, you probably want to do it with a constraint, and we'll talk about that next week, okay? Today, I want to kind of build upon this, this small, simple little example by talking about our first rigging element, okay? It's the most simple relationship that we can craft here in Modo, and it's called the parent-child relationship, okay? What a parent-child relationship is going to allow us to do is to, excuse me, it's going to allow us to have one item influence another item, okay? So we have a link on a chain, right? Let's kind of build the chain real fast. And I'm just going to restore or reset this scene, or revert, excuse me. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. There we go. It's just file, revert, right there. And that's going to restore this scene file to the state that it was currently in when you opened it. So like the initial state of the scene. It's a good, so keep that in mind. Good one to have. All right, so if you look back at the example that you saw online, of course, this is going to be an entire chain link, or an entire chain devoted, and created by a number of different links, okay? So we're going to need to duplicate these pretty significantly. Let's do it real fast, okay? Now, remember, we're in item mode now for all of this, so we need to make sure we're duplicating the item, not the polygons. So don't do your standard modeling thing and go, okay, let me just grab the polygon, okay? Copy, or, like edit, copy, edit, paste, and then move it down, okay? Don't do that. Don't do that, because we've now just made 2 chain links on one item. We want to be able to independently control all of these chain links, okay? Whatever you want to animate needs to be on its own item. So if it's going to move, it's got to be on its own dedicated item, because an item is the only thing that can move, right? It's the only thing that can animate. We're going to need to have 10 different chain links on 10 separate items. Yes, sir?
If we did do that, can we merge into one item?
You can, or you can just delete it. That's what I would do. I would delete that bottom set of polygons, and then I'm on my way. Yeah. No, it has to be separate pieces. Yeah. Each chain link needs to be animated separately, okay? So each chain link is going to be its own item. Okay. You can, absolutely. Absolutely. Instances are an item type. Instances are animatable, okay? I'm not going to do instances just to make it easier for you guys to see what's going on, okay? Yeah, so it's all going to be separate. All going to be separated out, all right? Okay, so let's duplicate some items now. There are a couple ways to duplicate some items. Let me show you just a quick, easy way of doing it. And it's so easy, it's hard. A lot of folks forget about this function over here in the item list. Okay. So if you were to right-click on this item, look at this crazy long popover list, this contextual menu, and then down here, check it out, we have duplicate. Just duplicate that item. And now you see we have 2 of them. 2 of them. 2 separate items. It's under the right-click menu. Right-click on the name, on the mesh item, and then the first duplicate. Okay. Now that we have 2 separate items, I'm going to select the bottom one, and then in item mode, so number 5, I'm simply going to move it down. Now we have 2. Okay? Now we have 2. And last time I looked, we probably need to rotate it a little bit. You could. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend doing that. That's a lot of extra work. Yeah. Yeah, so let me make sure I'm on the same page with you. So you're saying you have that one mesh item, and in polygon mode, you clone them, right? Yeah. Let me show you my issue with that, okay, and why I would recommend not doing that, okay, because you absolutely can go into duplicate, you can do clone, you could do this, you can do this until your heart's content, you could even do it pretty intelligently where you can rotate it like 90 degrees, pretty quickly like that, okay, and what you're recommending is that after you do that, you separate them all into items, right? So you can add new mesh item, mesh, okay? And then on the original, Command X, Command V. Absolutely, you could do that. However, you're infusing, I see your hand, Alex, I'll get to you. What you still have to do after the fact is change the location of all your center points, okay? Because remember, all rotation is gonna happen at the location of the center point. Here's the center point for that mesh item. Right there. That's it. Okay? Is it where it needs to be? No. So you're going to have to go back in and edit it. Okay? Which you're going to have to edit the center points either way. I think it's going to make more problems for it. It's going to be maybe 2 or 3 extra steps. Okay? But it is doable. Just be aware that you got to change the location of your center points. Okay? You got to do something like this so that it will rotate exactly where you need it to be. Yeah, there we go. And then this one will rotate where it needs to be. Okay? So you can do it. Just be aware that you'll have to edit maybe a couple more things than you normally would. Mr. Ty. Absolutely. You can also, if you wanted to, very quickly duplicate these using the clone tools. You can do item clones. Absolutely. Just make sure you're in item mode. Let me kind of restore my scene to what I previously had before Austin's question. Okay, so if you wanted to, just make sure you're in item mode. Okay, and then all of these tools here will allow you to clone items. Okay, and a whole bunch. And like I said, you can even be pretty smart and clever with this if you'd like. And tell Modo to rotate it 90 degrees on every clone. To get your chain. Okay. Now look carefully at the location of all these center points. Okay. We need to go in and edit the center points so that we're able to achieve the level of, or the precision that we need for the animation. Kaylee, go ahead. Yeah, so Kaylee's question was, how do I snap rotation to like 15-degree increments? Let me zoom in on this item here. I'll activate the item transform tool, and if you just rotate it, you're rotating it, kind of arbitrarily along that axis. If you hold down the control key before you click on the tool handles, it'll snap that rotation value to 15 degrees. It's wigging out because of my pen, but when you're using a mouse, it's pretty rock solid, okay? And so that's a fast way to very quickly rotate something to 90 degrees. And remember, you got to hit the control key before you click on the tool handle to move it, okay? Okay. So now that I have some my chain links already done, I've created the model. I'm being OCD here. I like to have, for whatever reason, this is just purely me. I like to have my cameras and my lights at the bottom of my item list. That's just me. Okay, so here's what we want to have, right? It's a cool little chain link. But if we look at the location of the items, is this going to rotate? Are we going to be able to create the illusion of life and the illusion of weight and gravity quickly with the item's center point in its current location? No, absolutely not. So if you look at where, and I always test my rigs as I'm building them, okay? This is something that you want to kind of get dialed before you start, okay? So hit the Y key or the rotate key. that's where it's going to rotate. Okay? It's not so important for the first one, but for the second one, look where the center point is. That's where it's going to rotate. Where should it rotate? If this on the top, yeah. If this little chain was being held from some sort of fixed position, like on a wall, and it was swinging like a pendulum, the location of our center point should be at the location where those two chain links touch each other, right? So it should be kind of like, oh, I don't know, like over here, right? Like right in there somewhere, okay? Let's check it out real fast. Let's do it. With my selection set to centers, I can grab my center point and move it up, just with the move tool. Just with the move tool. Boom. FYI, you can also use your orthographic perspectives to get a little accuracy in this. So let's look at it from like the right. Yeah, that works. I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm happy with that. That's close. Let's keep cruising here. Let's grab my center point. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you, Jessica. What was your question? The z-axis. Yeah, we're going to get back to that here in a minute. Hold on to that question just for 2 seconds, okay? Excuse me. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to do the first couple because I don't want to do all of them. It'd be like watching paint dry. But let's just test the system. If I grab that top one and rotate it, yeah, that's fine. It's going to rotate kind of like this, okay, rock and roll. If I grab that one, yep, that's probably how I want it to rotate. Cool. I grab this one. Yep, that's where I want it to rotate. Pretty cool. Okay, good. So it fundamentally kind of works. And I'm just going to delete those just to get them out of the way. All right. But right now, because of the system that we've crafted inside of Modo, each one of these chain links is separate and unconnected from the rest, right? They look as though they're kind of connected, but when we start animating, each chain link is still going to be independent. You know, there's no relationship between the chain links that's going to drive their movement. If I was to go and move the top one and rotate it, so if I was actually animating this thing to work, okay, maybe that's the starting pose for my animation, right? And then that means I would have to go into this one and like move it up and then rotate it into position. Yeah, exactly. Jessica's she's like, no, this is stupid. This is way too much work to do something that's relatively simple. You know, no, I'm not doing that times 10 chain links. Boo, okay? This is a monumental waste of Pat's time. Not going to happen, all right? So what we need to do is create a relationship. The whole point of a rig is to take a complex system and simplify it, okay? We have a complex system. At the end of the day, I'm going to have 10 separate chain links, okay? That's a little, in the larger scheme of things, that's a really simple system. When we start working with characters, you're going to have 40 or 50 separate parts and pieces that you'll have to manage, okay? We need to simplify this process down into a rig that allows us to create the movement that we want, but in a timely manner and in a fashion that's easy for animators to work with, okay? You're going to hear me say that a lot, and it's nothing against animators, okay? It's not that animators are unintelligent. We just don't want them going in and monkeying with stuff that they're not supposed to monkey with, okay? Like if my train, for example, I think I showed you that I distilled the entire locomotion of my train into one locator, right? You drag that one locator, the entire train follows the position of that one locator around the scene. All the wheels turn, all the pistons and the drive arms move like they're supposed to, okay? I don't want my animators touching any of that, okay? The only thing I want my animator to move is that one locator, okay? That's it. Complex into something simple. That's the goal. So let's talk about the system or the process of making our simple little machine here. I want to hit undo a number of times just to kind of restore everything. And I'm also, bear with me, I'm going to also just turn off the visibility of my cameras and my lights just to clean up my interface a little bit. There we go. All right. Ta-da! So here's what we need to do. We need to create our first relationship, the parent-child relationship, okay? Now, the parent-child relationship is pretty easy to create and is pretty easy to understand. The parent-child relationship is going to kind of link two separate items to each other, okay? The parent is going to send all of its transform information to the child, okay? Wherever the parent goes, the child is also going to go with it, okay? So the parent is kind of overwriting, if you will, all of the transform information for the child. Let me show you what this looks like in action. In order for us to create any relationship inside of Modo, we have to select a number of things, okay? Everything, as you know, begins and ends with a selection. Rigging is no different, okay? No different. So we're going to select that top guy, link numero uno, all right? And then we're going to hold down the shift key and select that one, okay? Now that yeah, that's fine. If you look very carefully over here in our item list, you can see that the two selected, the two selected items in the item list are kind of a little separated from each other. I think that actually works well right now. You'll see these move and change location here in a minute. Okay. Oops. All right. So let's go ahead and start making the link. Now there's a couple different ways that we can do this. I want to show you the easy way first, and then we'll do it not necessarily the difficult way, but another way. The easy way is to actually perform this entire operation in the item list. This is where your naming conventions really come into play, okay? Check it out. Ooh, that was a little too close. All right. So we want this item to be the parent to this item here, okay? Now, it's real easy to make a parent-child relationship in the item list. It's as easy as left-clicking on the child and dragging it on top of the parent. You can see we get that little orange bar with the arrow, right? That orange bar is signifying which, here we go, which object is going to be the parent. We let go, and it looks as though the child is gone, but it isn't. It's just been buried in hierarchy. We've made a relationship. That's yes. I have, and thank you for keeping me in check, Kaylee. I often try to I oversimplify things. No, I overcomplicate things. Yes, thank you. Yeah. It's the end of the week. My brain is getting kind of mushy at this point. All right, so let's check out what we got going on here. All right. Now that we've made the relationship between these two items, watch what happens. Also, visually, some things have changed here. Some things have changed. Because we now have a relationship in play, notice that I have the topmost chain link selected. But is there anything visually different about chain link number 2? Yeah, its wireframe color is now different. It's no longer that lovely, lovely kind of gray as we see down there on chain link number 3. A nice visual reinforcer that a relationship between these two items has been made. Okay, so if we were to rotate chain link number 1, watch what happens. Ah, the child goes along for the ride, which is great. It's really great, actually. Okay, this is a very, very simple relationship. Okay, and it works very well. Okay, questions so far? Yeah. Mr. May.
How do you unanimate an item? Because I had animated my ink, and then I duplicated it, and then trying to create the hierarchy, it said it's not parent-child with an animated item.
Right.
And also my links are going everywhere.
Your links are going everywhere. Okay. So when you're creating a rig, I think Mr. May has stumbled upon something that is worth pointing out. Don't have any keyframes while you're making the rig, okay? Because that's going to break the system. Okay, so this may work for you. Find the item that has all the keyframes and go over to the Properties tab and right-click on one of those channels. And so if you right-click on it, you're going to get this little popover, And I believe, so you can remove things in here. I thought there was, so you can remove key. There may have been, say again, remove all. That's what I'm looking for. Remove all. And that will remove all the keyframes from that object. Yeah. Yep, I think that's the one we want. Yeah, remove all. Okay.
What about resetting your center? Is that the same thing you could revert and that'll reset your center?
No, that should. I don't think that's going to reset your centers. Yeah, that was just to remove keyframes. Okay, so let's just go ahead and talk for a second here about what's happened. So we've made the parent-child relationship. The top links the parent, the bottom links the child. Wherever the parent goes, and really wherever we move it, you can see that that second object, the child, is also going to come along for the ride. Okay. However, we still get control over the child. It's not completely gone out of the equation. We still get the ability to animate this guy and move him or her around wherever we want to go. Okay. So we still get the level of control that we want, but it allows us to work a little bit more quickly with an object like this. Okay. All right. There is, but I don't think we're ready to talk about that yet. Just manage it today. Okay, manage it. Yeah. There is. Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted to snap center points to other vertices or other components in the scene, you absolutely can enable the snapping engine inside of Modo and set your snap values to vertex, or I think you can even do edge. Yeah, that's a quick way of getting things. I mean, if you really want that level of precision, that's a way to do it. Okay. All right. So I've already done a little bit of animating here on my topmost chain. I need to restore it back to its original position within my scene so I can continue building the rest of my little rig. How am I going to do that? What value am I going to enter? 0. Yeah. Getting your transform section back to 0, 0, 0 on both the position and rotation kind of restores this object to its original configuration and location within the scene. So simply restoring my Z channel here to 0 will get me what I'm after. Oops, excuse me. My mouse pad is really sensitive today. There we go. Now that it's back in its original spot, I can go ahead and take my bottom most chain link and drag and drop it onto chain number 2. There we go. Now I have my very simple hierarchy. Rotating the top one like that, okay, will animate all 3. And I still can go in and very quickly do that. Okay? Pretty cool. Simplest form of a rig inside of Modo. It really, really is. Okay? Questions so far? All right. Yes, sir. The second one. We're making a hierarchy, okay? So the hierarchy that you should see in your item list in Modo should reflect kind of the visual hierarchy of the actual chain itself. And if you zoom in on your item list, this becomes a little bit more apparent. You can see this machine in action. Yeah, so here's the first one. Here's chain number 2. Here's chain number 3. Okay? This is how Modo communicates a hierarchy inside of the item list. It's going to nest each item underneath the one above. Okay? Questions? Other questions about very simple parent-child relationship?
So it should just look like a
Staircase. Yep. Staircase. You got it. You got it. How do we unparent something? Maybe we want to start over. Maybe we messed up. Drag it out. It's just that easy. It really is. So maybe I don't want that third chain link to be a part of my system. Simply left-clicking and dragging it out of our hierarchy is going to remove the relationship. Like that. Okay? And now when I rotate that top one, number 3 is back to its normally kind of, behavior. All right? Generally, you want to make your rig first before you animate anything. Okay? All right. I want to add in some new elements here. we're going to make this a little bit more complicated. I'm sorry. Yeah, Tomoko's like, yeah, complex. I like this. We're gonna kick it up a notch. Okay. We're gonna add in the secret sauce that really makes this thing zing a little bit. Okay. Because what we don't want our animators to do is to go in and physically touch the item. Okay. We want our animators to be working with locators. We want to make kind of like an interface for our animators to go in and influence the rotation of all of the objects. Okay. This is kind of like maybe like if you're a car designer, for example. Generally, I love like Ferraris. That's like my car. I love Ferraris, right? When I win the lottery, I'm gonna be like going everywhere in a Ferrari. Okay. I'm gonna like go get the mail in the Ferrari, right? I'm gonna like go 10 feet down my driveway in my Ferrari if I win the lottery. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. So the guys at Ferrari really don't want that billionaire, playboy guy messing with the engine on the inside of the car, right? They don't want you physically going in and monkeying with things. So what do they give you? They give you a steering wheel. They give you pedals and stuff. They give you an interface for the engine so that you can do something with your car, right? We want to do the exact same thing for all the rigs that we create. We don't want our animators touching our items, okay? Because that increases the opportunity for them to mess something up, right? And guess who gets to fix their problems? This guy, okay? And I don't want to mess with, they break my stuff all the time, and it makes me very unhappy because now I got to figure out what they broke and reverse engineer it and fix it. So we want to create an interface that allows them to do what they need to do without messing up the rest of the rig, okay? This is going to become very, very important in about 3 weeks when we start doing characters. Because I don't want my animators going in and messing with all my joints. I don't want my animators messing with my constraints. You're only allowed to touch a locator if you're an animator, okay? And 9 times out of 10, animators, they don't want to have to deal with that anyways. That's not their job. That's not their job. Their job is just to make things move. My job as a 3D modeler and the rigger is to make the model and then make the internal machinery to make that thing move. So we need to create some control surfaces for our little rig. And Modo has a really, really neat system that allows us to very quickly create some control surfaces for anything, okay? And personally, I think this is where the Modo rigging system in Modo starts to show its awesomeness, okay? Let me show you what I'm talking about. I need to extend my rig. So I need to kind of restore my scene back to what it was at the beginning. We could go in and, into each item and find the value and just put it back down to 0. That works, okay? However, let me show you one other thing that's really kind of neat. What if all 3 of the rotation channels have keyframe information on it, okay? That's 3 little clicks that we now have to return back to 0. It's a lot of clicking. What if they've also moved our chain somewhere in our scene? So now we have to reset all of the XYZ transform information and the XYZ rotation information back to 0. What if they've scaled it? I mean, that's 9 separate things that we have to go click, 0, return. Click, 0, return, okay? No, okay? Let me show you something. People often overlook this in the properties tab. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Over here, right below scale, we have reset, freeze, and then 0. Okay? For this week and next week and maybe even the week after that, you are not allowed to touch freeze or 0. We're going to get to their role and their function a little bit later. If you touch these now, you're gonna cause some problems. Okay? But reset is what we want to look at. Check it out. You can already see on this chain link that I've included a value of 80.8 along the z-axis. So if I go down to this reset and I do rotation, boom, look what happens. All those rotation values are reset back to 0, 0, 0. And this is really kind of handy, especially when you have information on the position, rotation, and scale, because there's a reset all. Okay? And it will return all of those values back to 0, 0, 0. Okay? Kind of a nice little trick to expedite the process of returning this object back to its original orientation. So I want to reset all. Okay? Now, does anyone know why it did that? Let's.
Its center point is now central to the origin, but the polygons are not centered to the center point.
Let's decode that. You're close. You're very, very close.
It wasn't a 0, 0 before, and now it sets that.
Bingo. Okay, it wasn't originally at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to hit undo a number of times here because I want to show you something. This is absolutely something that you guys will run into. Okay. See if I have enough undo. There we go. Okay. So now we're back to the point in the system where I had all my chain links. Okay. I had all my chain links, and I just simply parented them together. Let's look very carefully at the location of link number 2. Okay. I have it selected. Look over here at our transform section. When I cloned the item, it didn't put the location of that cloned item at 0. Okay, it moved it down 8 meters, or excuse me, 1.62 meters. Okay, when I cloned it, and when I rotated it, or when I did that clone operation, I also asked it to rotate it 90 degrees, right? So when I reset all those values back to 0, it's going to go to the original location of that chain link. Okay. Yeah, yeah. What we need to do when we're finished with the creation of all of our chain links is that we need to tell each item that its current location is what we call the setup pose. Okay? The current location is kind of like its home. Okay? That the current location is 0, 0, 0 on both the position and the rotation values. Okay? Look carefully at what we got going on here. All right? Here's the first chain link. Its transform information is already set to 0, 0, 0. When I duplicated that second one and moved it down, I did it in item mode. And if you remember back to our earlier conversation, anytime you change an item, change its location in space, the computer's going to remember that number, right? You can't delete it. You can't get rid of it. It's always going to remember the change that you made to that item, okay? Since we changed it, since we changed its location, it's preserving all of that information in the transform. So if I was to simply reset its position, it goes up. Okay. So I lied to you before. I lied to you. I told you to forget 0 and freeze until a couple weeks. We need to zero this out in order for this to work. I got a little ahead of myself. So check this out. We have 0 down here at the bottom. Freeze is something that I honestly don't really use all that often, but 0 is an important operator inside the mix because it's going to allow us to basically tell the computer that the current location of any item is its new setup pose. When we zero out all of these channels, we're physically going to change this value to 0, 0, 0, but its position inside of our scene isn't going to change. I want you to watch what happens to chain link number 2 when I zero out everything. Did it move? No. But, yeah, all of these now are at 0. So if I was to simply rotate number 2 here, okay? Oops, excuse me, didn't mean to deselect it. If I put this back down to 0, boom, it goes where it needs to go. Okay? That makes sense? Okay. Let's do the same thing for number 3, because number 3 also has the exact same problem. We've moved it, and we've also rotated it when we did that clone operation. So if we zero out everything, bam, now it thinks that its current location is its new home, is its resting pose, its setup pose. This is what we want to do before we animate anything, because we always want to make sure that we're giving ourselves and our animators the opportunity to reset and restart their animation. The only way to reset and restart any animation is to return these values back to 0, 0, 0, 0. Kaylee.
Did you click on 0 all?
I did 0 all. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you want to probably, the order of operations, you duplicate all the chains, you move their center points, then you zero out their transforms. I can't hear you, Alex. Can you speak up? You could do that too. That works. I'm happy with that. Can you say that again?
Could you read 0 and measure?
You can? Yeah. You can hit that 0 button as many times as you want. I would only recommend doing it once. Yeah.
Oh, really?
For each item.
For each item?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So we were starting to talk about creating a simple little machine for each one of these links, because I really don't want my animators to go in and touch each one of these links. Okay. I only want them to touch, excuse me, I only really want them to touch a locator, okay? And on that locator, we'll get the action handles. That's what I want them to do, okay? So let's talk about how we can make some locators for this, all right? Locators are really easy to make inside of Modo, and they allow us to create some new items that we then can use as interface elements, as control surfaces for our objects in the scene, all right? There's a couple ways we can do this. Let's do the simple way first. We can actually, whenever you make an item, it creates a locator for you, okay? You just don't see it. Let's do this. Okay. Over here in your Properties tab, I've made my interface just a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on, all right? If we cruise over here and look at the Display tab, this is an area that we've never actually really gone into before, okay? This is where we get to change the visibility of the item, of the pivot point, the center point, okay? We can also change the size of, I think, the center point. Let me double check that. If I put that to 5.0, what happens? Oh, that's the size of the label. So this would be chain link 1. Yeah, there we go. So make a little label. Then you can offset that label so that it's not like on top of something. I thought that was what this one was. No, unfortunately not. Yeah, it's going to maintain the same size on screen no matter what your zoom parameter is. Okay. You can also add some draw options, which are kind of fun. This is another great way of creating elements that are easy for people to kind of decode. So maybe you don't want to show the wireframe at all for this object. You can click on it. Oh, draw style needs to be solid. There we go. So you can just change how it's drawn on a per item level, which is kind of cool. You can also change the wireframe color. I actually do this a lot when I do characters. Like everything on the left will be red. Okay. And wireframe needs to be set to user. There we go. And it's kind of hard to see at the moment, but the wireframe is red, which is kind of nice. All right, it's pretty cool. You can also change the fill color. Let's make it red too. Oops. Let's change the fill parameter to, there we go. Now we're not overwriting the material. We're just changing the OpenGL representation of that object. Okay, pretty cool. But what we don't get, let's see, it's not an assembly, is it? No. What we don't get in here is the ability to change the center point, or to get a locator for that object. So let's talk about how we do this. They must have taken it. They used to have another option here in 601. We create a custom locator right on an item. So let me just turn this wireframe back to off. There we go. We don't need the label. Turn that off. Cool. All right. So now we're kind of back to where we were. Let's create a locator. And creating a locator is easy. It's up here in our setup tools. And it's that button right there. That's how you create a locator. If you just simply left click on it, a new locator is going to be inserted at the origin of our scene. There it is. If you look over here in our item list, it's showing up as locator. Rock and roll. That's pretty cool. Okay. That's a whole lot of fun. So, huh? So it's just you click on that button right there in your toolbar. The little cross looking thing. That's a locator. And there it is. There's our locator. Whee! Okay. Now we want our locator to be in the exact same position as the center point for this item. Because what we're going to do is that I'm going to create a little circle that my animators can touch, that they can click on to manipulate my chain. Okay? But each locator needs to be in the exact same position as the item that it's going to control. So I have a locator here that's going to control my top chain link. Okay, so it needs to be in the exact same position. Let's give it a good name. We want to make sure that we're naming these things intelligently. So let's give it a good name. I'm going to call this chain link 01 control. There we go. All right. Now I need to parent this object to my chain link number 1, right? How do I do that? Drag and drop, right. I'm going to parent my entire system here to that new locator, okay? So when I grab the locator and move my locator, the entire chain link moves. Rock and roll, okay? There we go. Now we have a system that allows us to select the locator and manipulate this object, okay? Let's expand our hierarchy here so we can see what's going on. I basically want to do this for all of my objects in the scene. So what I like to do is I don't like to parent things until I've created them. So I want to unparent all my chain links from my locators. And let's do this. I'm just going to create a new locator. Let's give it a good name. Chain link 02 control. There we go. You can also duplicate these if you'd like. Duplicate. Okay. You got it. They're all in the same spot. They're all in the same spot. But as I mentioned a moment ago, each one of these locators needs to be in the exact same spot as the object that they're going to control. So chain link 02 control needs to share the exact same center point position as its chain link, right? Control number 3 needs to be in the exact same position as chain link number 3. Okay, so we got some moving that we have to do. And I want a little precision in this. Actually, I want a lot of precision in this. Okay, like a lot of precision. Okay, I don't want to like willy-nilly just, I can move it. Okay, I can just grab it and move it down. No. Okay, there are better ways of doing this inside of Modo. Check this action out. You guys are going to love this. This is so much fun. This is rad. We've been hanging out in the setup tab, but if you look at the tools, this is fun. You guys will dig this. If you go to the tools over here, we have this setup tab, okay? Look at this. This is rad. I love this. This is so cool. Okay. We have these match and align tools. Check this action out. This is cool, okay? We can align things on an item level, okay? We can match and align the location of our locator to, the location of one of our chain links just by doing item position, okay? Let's select them. Let's get this machine going. I want to select, let's just do chain link number 3. Huh? Setup tab. Okay. I'm going to grab chain link number 3, and I'm going to hold down my command key, and I'm going to hold down my control key. There we go. And select chain link number 3, okay? So locator number 3 first. The link, the actual mesh item, second. And then in setup, match item position. And you can see that that locator automatically, boom, moved precisely to the exact same place within the scene as chain link number 3 is living. Let's do it one more time so you guys can see what's going on. I'm going to grab chain link number 2, or control surface number 2. I'm going to hold down the control key and grab chain link number 2. And then in the setup tab, match and align, item position, boom. Perfect. Perfect. Let's do it one more time. Oh, I just hit undo there. Okay. I'm going to grab control surface number 2, hold down the control key, and grab mesh item chain number 2. Okay. And then in the setup tab, I can go to match and align, item position. And what we're doing here is that we're moving that locator to the exact same position as chain link number 2. Their center points have been completely aligned, okay? You always want to select the object that you want to move first, and then the object that you're moving to second. That make sense? Okay. That's a really fast and easy way of moving things with precision. All right. Now that we have all this established, what should we probably do to each one of our locators? Yeah, we got to zero them out, right? So if we go to the Properties tab, for this first control surface, it's already where it needs to be. But for number 2, we need to zero out the position. Or we can do zero all. For chain link number 3, same thing. Let's zero out all. And now the current location of all of those locators, it matches the current location of all the chain links. Okay. And I think I'm going to change this ever so slightly. I'm going to take control surface number 1, and I'm going to move it. Well, no, I'll leave it where it is. That's fine. I don't want to confuse people. I'll just leave it where it is. Okay. So now what do we got to do? I want these control surfaces to physically control their own link, right? So I got to start making some relationships. I got to start parenting the mesh items to their control surface. So let's do the first one. And let me zoom in so you guys can see what's going on. So that one, drop on top of there. Chain 2, we'll break it for the time being, but that's okay. And chain 3 will parent over here. There we go. Okay, so we have link control, and then parented to it, it's the chain link number 1. We have link control 2. It has its own system, 3 and 3. So we've kind of, to a certain degree, we've broken apart our entire machine, but now we're going to parent all of these chain links to each other. Drag. And drop. There we go. Oof, perfect. Let's double check our machine. Whenever I'm rigging anything, I always grab that element in the item list. Don't do it in the inspector or in the OpenGL viewport. Do it in the item list. That way you can test it to see if the machine's working. Yep. And grab chain link control number 2. Yep. Grab chain link number 3 control. Yep. Well, I messed up on the rotation, but I could fix that. Oops. That's okay. That's just me not having adjusted the location of that center point where it needs to go. But you guys are going to be perfect on it. I'm not. Okay. Makes sense so far, what we're doing here? Okay. I'm going to reset all of these values. Let's start at the top of the chain. Reset all. Chain link number 2, reset all. Chain link number 3, reset all. Looks like I forgot to zero something out maybe on chain link number 3, which is why it popped out. So let's fix it real fast, okay? Let's fix it. And it looks like I didn't zero out chain link number 3, the actual mesh item. So let's do this. Let's just see what's going on. Here, I'm going to move this guy up. And let's do this. Let's also zero all that out on the actual item. We'll zero out the locator, and now we're good to go. Let's test the system. Always test, test, test. That's my tip of the day. Just test the system to make sure it's behaving as it should. And now it is. Okay, great. Okay. Now, have we made it really any easier at this moment for our animators to go in and select these little guys? Kinda. To a certain degree, yes. But to a certain degree, no. I have a system now where, that guy right there is really easy to select. However, chain link number 2, a little bit more difficult, and certainly number 3, also a little bit more difficult. I don't know about you guys, but these locators, you have to be like Johnny on the spot with your mouse. You only have like 1 pixel line to select. So they're not exactly the easiest things to select in the world, okay? So let me show you something that's really cool about locators. And this is the reason why we want to use these locators to create a little mini interface for our objects. Okay? We're going to change the way these locators are drawn. I don't like crosses. That cross, very difficult to select. Very difficult to see, especially when you have a lot of them. Check this action out. This is really kind of cool. I'm going to select that locator, and in the Display tab, so let's grab number 1. So down here, check it out. Display. Okay. Now we kind of went over this a little bit before, but in the locator now, this is only available when you're working with a locator, not a traditional mesh item. You have this locator shapes. Shape is default. No. Let's do custom. Okay. And let's do this. Let me zoom out so you guys can see what's going on. Ah, it's a cube. That's cool. It's now a gray cube. You can still see the cross on the inside of the cube. If you don't want that cross there, as I don't, and under Style, hit Replace instead of Add. And now you'll just get a cube. Boom. Still a locator. Still a whole lot easier to select, right? Instead of selecting the little cross, I can select the locator, hit the Y key, and I'm on my way. Okay? It's still a locator. It's just being drawn as a cube now. That's kind of neat. Look at some of the other options you have in that draw command. Locator shapes. Now we have a shape pull-down menu. So if you don't want a box, you can do a pyramid. Woo! You can even change the alignment of that pyramid. So maybe you want the pyramid pointed up. That's cool. That's cool. All right. You also have a rhombus, kind of like a cool little diamond. It's pretty neat. I am a little bit cylinder. I think that's actually new in 701. I don't think the cylinder was there. No, it was. I apologize. Cone's good. Sphere, plane. Plane's cool. Plane's cool. I like having planes in there. I like circle. Circle's my favorite. You can also control if it's solid or not. So if you just want a wireframe circle, still a little bit more difficult to select, but it's an option. Some people, if you're coming from other packages, this is the only option that you have, is just a wireframe circle. You can also make it solid. Let's put it back at solid. Align to view is kind of cool. Let's change the axis to, what was it, Z, I think? Yeah. Now that circle is always going to be pointing at the screen, which is kind of cool. So it will always be facing the user's perspective, and you will always see a circle, which is pretty neat. Okay. I don't want it to be gray, so if you go back into 3D items, this is where that draw option really comes into play. Let's do the wireframe color as user defined, and I'm going to make it, let's make it a dark red. Yeah, I'll make it a dark red. There we go. Almost so red that you can't see that it's red. And then I'm going to make the fill color also user defined, and I'll just make that primary red. There we go. Now that's a whole lot easier for me to see. Okay? I like that. That's kind of nice. It makes it very easy to click. And then you just go boink, and you're on your way. It's cool. Now, I don't necessarily want that circle on the inside of my chain link. Okay? Because it's still that's going to be this, it's all well and good for this top one, but if I was to place a circle on locator number 2, problem. Big problem, right? Okay, this is going to be right in the middle of these chain links. Check it out. Under the locator shapes section, the radius is going to determine the size of my little circle, but look at the channels right above it. Those offset channels are rad, because now we can move this locator away from its original position. We're not changing the location of its center point. We're just changing the place where this circle is being drawn. Okay? We're basically just changing the location of the polygon inside the scene. Check it out. So I'm going to offset this along the x-axis. Okay, I need to do like a meter. There we go. Let's do 3 meters. Aha! But now I can click on it, Notice where its center point is. It's still where we need it to be. Okay? Rock and roll. Now we have something that we can work with. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other locators. D2L just kicked me out. I apologize. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other two locators. I'm going to grab them, okay, and I'm going to go to locator shapes, and I'm going to do custom locator shapes, and what was it? It was replace. I wanted a circle. I wanted it to be aligned to view, so that it's always circular. It's always facing towards me. And I think I offsetted it 3 meters along the x-axis. There we go. Look how easy it is to click on it now. Boom. Let's do the same thing for locator number 3. Locator shape. The shape values here are going to be set to custom. We're going to replace the locator with a shape. That shape is going to be a circle. We want it to be aligned to view along the z-axis, and we're going to offset the location of that control surface by 3 meters. Now, check it out. Grab it, hit item transform, and I'm working. Oops, I moved it on accident. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Just with locators. Just with locators. Locators are going to allow us to create that little interface element for our rigs. We're going to be doing this a lot. Questions? Don't want to show you one. This is going to melt. This is going to melt your brains. Melt your brains. You don't have to do this, but it's so cool that I can't not show you guys. Okay. Modo has a redonkulous rigging system. It really is the best rigging system on the face of the planet. It's a modern rigging architecture that I just love. Okay. I've rigged things in Maya. I've rigged things in Cinema 4D. The Modo rigging system, in my opinion, just has those guys beat. Okay, it really is the most powerful system I've ever seen. Shoot, I can even set up a rig where there's logic being applied to the rig. So it's basically asking if-then questions. I saw a rig that was made by a guy who's like the master rigger, on the face of the planet. It was crazy. It was a little padlock, right? And the little high school padlocks. It's got the U-shape arm that pops up and swivels, right? Well, the arm doesn't pop up and swivel, or you can't pop it up and swivel until you rotate the dials to the correct combination on the lock. What? That's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, so let me show you something that's really cool. It will actually, I like doing this a lot, because if you remember, what we're doing with these locators is that we're selecting them and then we're turning on item transform immediately so we can rotate them. Well, we can skip a step here. What if we told the locator to automatically activate item transform when we clicked on it? We can do that. It's pretty rad. Let me just restore all these guys. I'm going to reset these locators back. Okay, there we go. Now we're back to the original starting position, if you will. So check it out. I'm going to grab my locator, and it's kind of buried, but it's in the assembly area. Okay, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. You guys are going to love this. Okay. Whenever and they have changed this a little bit. I apologize. Is it in assembly? It should be in assembly. Hold on a second. I'm having a brain dump. Yeah, it's under command. They've changed the interface ever so slightly. But if you look carefully, about halfway down the assembly tab, we have this utility section. And it used to be a little bit more prevalent, but we have a command. And what this is going to do is that we can tell this locator to fire off any Modo command when someone clicks on it. Okay? So, for example, there is a command inside of Modo that's scene.render, right? What do you think is going to happen when you type in scene.render? It's going to render your scene, right? So in essence, if I put scene.render, I think it's scene.render. If you put scene.render into that command line, click on your locator, what's going to happen? Modo's going to render your scene. Now we really are making little mini interfaces with locators, okay? Now, I'm not expecting you guys to go in and start memorizing the actual commands that Modo is driving, as Modo is using to drive the application. However, check this out. Anytime that there is a little arrow, this means that there's a pull-down list. And the guys at Luxology are awesome. They've kind of given us the greatest hits inside of that pull-down list. One of which, okay, so these are the greatest hits. One of which is, oh, I don't know, toolset.transform rotate item on. That's kind of what we want, right? So now, if I was to select it, boom, the rotation tool automatically turns on. And I can rotate it. Boom. Boom. On my way. Pretty cool, huh? I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Simple, elegant power. It's pretty great. Just click on it, the rotation tool automatically turns on. And the location of your transform handles is at the location of the actual locator, which is great. Love it. Questions? Yes, Mr. May. What is it showing?
It is showing GCOM 410.2. It may have
Really?
restarted after. Yeah, it's showing that.
It's showing this thing?
No.
That screen. Oh. Oh. Okay. Yeah, it never, for whatever reason, it never caught back up. It paused there. Can you still hear my audio?
Yes.
Okay, so the video dumped out on me. All right. Thank you for alerting me to that critical piece of information. I don't know why it's no longer updating it. Okay, I'll figure that out. Bummer. Big bummer. As a replacement for all of this, keep in mind, I give some more, okay? Inside of renderography, okay, under the GCOM 410 section, under this resources section, down at the bottom, these videos, these three videos, these two videos talk about everything that we just did, okay? Creating parent-child relationships in Modo, if you watch that video, it steps you through everything that I just did. Creating locators, changing their shapes, doing the utility section in the properties tab. It does everything, okay? So you still have access to all the content that we went through today in those three videos, okay? Everyone good? Yeah? And I apologize for the live stream. Maybe I should apologize to the folks on YouTube that were trying to watch my live stream. Hello, YouTube. Okay. While we're here, let's just kind of revisit what the expectations for your homework assignment is going to be. Your homework assignment is going to be to animate this chain. So if you look carefully, what you're going to be doing here is this guy right there, okay? I've given you the link. You need to create a rig for your train. A rig for your chain, excuse me, a rig for your chain, and then animate that chain, okay, as if it was falling from a central fixed point that does not move, okay? Within this assignment, I'm looking for you guys to kind of communicate a sense of weight, to illustrate a sense of gravity, okay? Oops, let's play it again. And all this is done, you're just going to be animating rotation. That's all you're going to be doing in this, all right? So watch the example. This is a good one. Remember arcs, as the chain moves back and forth, it is going to bend. So make sure you have that bend in there. It should, if you animate your chain like, you know, just not bending at all, you're not achieving the sense of gravity that I want you guys to try to infuse in this, all right? Yes.
Creating a render too, right? Not just a Lux file.
Just perfect segue, because I wanted to talk about that render. This is going to be rendered. This is a full-blown render. Everything in here that we do is going to be rendered. Okay, this is the advanced animation class. So we're going to be doing, you guys have got to learn what it's like to render all of your assignments. Let's just go through the expectations for this project, and then we'll talk about the rendering component, because there is a couple little hitches in the giddy-up for rendering. Okay, so mesh item, chain with 10 links. So I'm expecting 10 different chain links in your final project. Okay, control rig for chain with separate control surfaces for each chain link. We just went over how to do that. Okay. Materials and textures for all links. I'll leave it up to you. I would recommend not doing metallic stuff. Okay, because it's going to just take forever to render. Okay, little tip.
Metallic textures.
If you have a long period of time to render this assignment, make it look like a metallic chain. If you don't have a long period of time to do this render, make it not metallic, because the metallic stuff just takes a while to render. Okay.
So do you want us to use map it and texture it?
Up to you. Up to you. Up to you. I'll leave it up to you to figure. If you want to UV map it, do it. Absolutely. I would UV map the first one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then duplicate it first. Absolutely. Okay. I'll leave it up to you. You're going to find that in a lot of the assignments that I'm going to be giving you this semester, there's going to be a certain degree of creativity that I'm hoping you guys kind of jump on board with. Okay. A lot of the expectations are going to be technical and kind of global expectations. So I want you guys to really utilize your creative brains and figure out something that looks cool. Animation. Chain needs to swing from a stationary point like a pendulum and then come to a rest. Okay? The animation duration is going to be 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Okay? At a frame rate of 24 frames per second. So please make sure you double check your sequence settings before you start animating anything. Okay? Environment map. Yes. Okay? I have specifically chosen this example as an example of what your render should not look like. Okay? It is metallic and it has a black background. Okay? We are done, and I mean done animating and rendering with black backgrounds. Okay, we're done with that. I want you to use an environment map. There's a bunch that come for free inside of Modo. Pick any one of them. It does not make a difference to me on this assignment. You just can't have a black background. Okay. Global illumination on. FYI, this used to be something that we had to change. In 701, it defaults to on. That's cool. All right. You almost don't even have to think about it anymore. However, the one thing that you absolutely do need to change is the frame size that you're going to render with. Okay? Please note that this is all 1280 by 720 at a pixel aspect ratio of 1.0. Let's revisit where within the Modo interface we are going to change this. Okay? Do it. If you want to do 1080p, I say absolutely do it. I'll never say no. And the reason I think that's a good idea, and the reason that we're doing everything at 1280 by 720 is that this is the new standard, okay? I want you guys to have some high resolution pieces of artwork that you can put on your demo reel and that you can show people. Doing things at 720 by 480 makes it look like your work is, from the mid-90s, all right? Everything that we produce is in high definition and at an aspect ratio of 16 by 9. So we want all of our images to look like that too. Okay?
Do you want our frames to be 1280 by 720?
Yep, 1280 by 720.
Are we using After Effects to do this, or?
Yes. We're gonna get back to that in a second, but the answer to that question is yes. Okay. All right, real quick. You can see that the guys down at Luxology have changed our render environment a little bit. They've massaged it. It's kind of a new vision on the direction of the render view. It used to be a 3 viewport setup. Now it's down to 2. And they've made our properties tab over here kind of the full height of the interface. So something to kind of manage and mitigate. All of the information that we're used to seeing is still there. It's just been kind of shuffled around in slightly different places. The one thing that gets people, and this got me for the first couple times when I was using 701 last year, was where are the material presets? Okay, yeah, everyone's, because it used to be a huge column on the left-hand side. It's still there. It's down here in this bottom one. and it's in a tab called the preset browser. Okay, so it's right there. There's all of our presets. Okay, and we still get the same kind of interface like we had before. It's just it's in a horizontal window opposed to that vertical window that we had in 601. Okay, let's talk about changing the frame size. The shader tree is kind of now in its own section, and it's down here at the bottom. And the reason they've done that is because now that we're kind of getting more advanced modules, like the effects modules, the particles, the simulation stuff, we need to be able to select our items in conjunction with the shader tree elements. So that's why the item list is up top, shader tree is down below. And as always, if changing the frame size for our render involves us going into the the purple render ball, and there it is, frame size right there, 1280 by 720. And the pixel aspect ratio defaults to 1.0, so you're good on that. Just 1280 by 720, 1280 by 720 going forward, 16 by 9. It's great, nice widescreen. It uploads to YouTube quite nicely. You can share it with your Facebook friends, as I know you will. I know you're going to want to share this animation on Facebook. I've already shared mine with my colleagues on Facebook. No, I haven't done that. So click on the word render in your shader tree. Yep, and then it's right there. So you click on the word render. Oops. Click on the render, and then in the properties tab, where you're going is right here. So you click on that first and that second. 1, 2. All right. Okay. Let's talk about how we're going to be working with all of these with our render. Okay. I hesitate to show you this, but I feel compelled to show you this. This is one of those things that, as a instructor, I want to show you. As a professional, I go, no. Okay. So as an instructor, I know firsthand, I'm not naive enough to believe that all of you guys have a bazillion hours to render all of your assignments, okay? I want renders for everything. But some of you guys are, I know this is going to happen because it happens every time. You're going to wait until the 11th hour, okay? You're going to wait until Friday morning. You show up to the lab on like 10 o'clock on Friday morning, and you animate, and then by like noon, you got the render. And you only have an hour to render your assignment, but because you use metallic textures, like I told you not to, your render is going to take 8 hours to render. But you only have about 45 minutes until your assignment is late, okay? Modo has a really cool feature now that allows you to reduce the quality of your render to meet a specific render duration. So if you only have an hour, you can set an hour into your render parameters, and it will dumb down the quality so that your render pops out in an hour. Okay? It's awesome. It's really cool. It is good technology. But you can kind of see where I'm coming from. As a teacher, this is kind of an invaluable thing. As a professional, I'm like, dude, never do that. Because now you're lowering the quality of your work. I'd rather you turn in something than not turn in anything. All right. So let me show you how to do this. It's pretty easy, but it's kind of not obvious. It's actually really not obvious on how this whole thing works. Okay. In order for you to render out it's really just a preview animation. Okay. A preview of your final animation. You do it in the preview window up top, up here, okay? And under options, render animation, way down here at the bottom. So, whoops, it's not working. So it's just at the bottom, okay? Render animation. Now I'm gonna just let's do this. I'm gonna change my timeline settings here to just be 10 frames. There we go. Or we'll do 24 frames. 24 frames so that at least we have 1 second of animation in there. Okay, there we go. And let's actually animate this thing so at least it's kind of makes a little bit of sense. Okay, so over the course of a second, I just want my guy to go. Let's just do this. Go to the end. Yoink. Masterpiece. Okay, there is my masterpiece. You can scrub through it down here. Just make sure it's working. Yep, okay, great. So now that I have animation, I have my range of frames, options, render animation, and this is where you get to do it. Okay. Okay. Render time. This is how much time you have to devote to said render. Okay. It's done in seconds. It's done in kind of like SMPTE time code. So the first set of zeros represents hours. The second set of zeros, where it says 05 in mine, represents minutes. And then the last set of zeros is seconds. Okay? So if you only have 10 seconds to render your animation, you'd put just 00 colon 00 colon 10. Let's put a minute. We'll devote a minute to this render. Okay? And see what we get. However, you need to be very, very careful on the first frame, last frame stuff. This is not a perfect system. Okay? My first frame is 0. My last frame is 24. Okay? So I need to make sure that that's dialed before I go any further. And you can save it as an image sequence. You can also save it as a QuickTime movie. Okay? I'll save it as a QuickTime movie just so you guys can see what's going on. And then I'll hit OK. Let's give it a name. I'll put it on my desktop. I'll call this Don't Do This Ever. Even though I know you will do it. I know you will do it. And I'll just, this Express QuickTime is new, and I've never seen anything be titled Express QuickTime. So I'm going to do what I know, and that's just QuickTime Movie. Let's save. And there it is, preview animation rendering. So it's going to go through, it's going to scan my entire animation, and it's going to figure out what it needs to do to render this animation in a minute. And you can see just by the preview quality, it's not that great. It's just, it's dumbing down the quality of my image to ensure that all 24 of those frames are rendered in a minute.
How much time did you set it in for?
I think it's just a minute for me.
So it'll take a minute to analyze, and then it'll figure out how long it needs or what quality it needs to go down to do it in a minute.
Nope. It does the analysis like almost instantly. So it's just going to render my entire animation in a minute. So if you have like 45 minutes until class, put 45 minutes in there, and at least you'll have a render. At least you'll have something.
How long is it supposed to take?
I don't know. I don't know. It could, for a very, very simple animation in a very, very simple model like this, you may get full quality. You may get full quality. Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's. I don't think you get any. Obviously, you're not going to get any sort of gain in that.
This animation stuff's pretty powerful because it keeps picking up repeatedly after the time.
Really. That's a bummer.
And this is simple stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I got like 1,000 windows open. I apologize. There it is. Don't do this ever. Yeah, it's not 1280 by 720. The image is actually much, much smaller. Yeah, it's only 740 by 416. So, but at least I have a render. At least it's something. At least it's something. Okay. Pretty cool, huh? So that is an AA option for you. That is A option. It's not the way I would like you to do it, but it may happen. Okay. Here's the way I would like you to do it. Okay, rendering animations in Modo is pretty simple. It's not too complex, but it does require us to participate in a workflow that you guys probably have never done before. Okay, out there in the real world, we don't render QuickTime movies like I just rendered here. We render frames. Okay, why? Why do we render frames instead of QuickTime movies? Does anyone know? You won't lose it all. Okay, the way QuickTime works, that's a self-contained QuickTime movie. As the computer is rendering a QuickTime movie, it saves each frame of animation in a temporary cache file, okay, that you don't see, that you don't get access to. When it's done rendering all of those frames, it takes all that temporary information, makes a QuickTime movie. So the file that's created, the QuickTime, isn't actually saved to your hard drive until it's done, right? What happens if your computer crashes like halfway through? You lose everything, right? Because the file, the QuickTime file, isn't written to your disk until 100% completion, okay? The way we prefer to work on it out in the real world is that we write an image sequence. Each frame is written to a separate file. So if my animation, this animation here has 24 frames in it, so I'm going to get 24 separate image files to deal with, okay? Now the benefit of this is that at the conclusion of the render, at the conclusion of each frame, the rendering engine, Modo, is going to save that image to the hard drive. So as soon as it's done rendering one frame, it saves it. So if you're halfway through rendering and Modo crashes, well, you don't have to go back and render the first 50 frames, the first 50%. You only have to render the stuff that you didn't get to, okay? This is really, really important for when you're working on like big films like Pacific Rim. The amount of rendering that they did on Pacific Rim is amazing, okay? You only want to render those frames once, okay? Because they cost so much to generate. They cost a tremendous amount of money to generate those frames, okay? It's a bad day when you have to re-render something, at ILM. Okay, you only want to hit that render button until you know it's dialed. And crashes happen. Crashes happen all the time. Even at ILM and Pixar, crashes happen. So this is kind of our way to ensure that if the computer crashes or when the computer crashes, we don't have to go back in and re-render something that was already created. Okay. So there's a big benefit of rendering frames out there in the real world. However, there's a new workflow that we have to get used to doing. Okay. And let's just render a couple frames here so you guys can get an idea of what's going on. I want to show you my workflow. It's really easy, but it is going to be uncomfortable as we walk through this process, okay? A traditional render. So if we were to go up to the top of the screen where it says render, FYI, we also got to do render animation now, okay? Just don't hit render because it's just going to render one frame. Boop. Renders one frame, okay? What we want to do is render animation. And this is going to give us kind of that same popover that we saw a moment ago. Let's set it from 0 to 24. Frame step. Almost always leave this at 1. If you leave your frame step at 1, it's going to render every single frame. If you put it to 2, it's going to render every other frame. If you set it to 3, it's going to render every third frame. Okay? People often increase their frame step when they're just trying to get like a quick approximation of the sequence and how the animation's flowing out. Okay? Final render, you always do it at 1 because obviously you want to render every frame.
So 1 for the final product?
Yep. Frame step, just always leave it at 1.
Okay.
And then you can save it as an image sequence. New in 701 is the ability to render as a movie. You can do this if you want. I would recommend that you don't. Okay. To be honest with you, I haven't actually done this in 701. I've only done it. I always do image sequence because it's the more kind of safe way of working. So if you let me show you image sequence. It's pretty cool. It's going to ask for a location. Okay. Please, please, please do all of us in here and in the lab a favor. Save these into a folder. Okay. Remember, when you hit this magical save button, it's going to create a separate file, a separate PNG for each frame of your animation. Do the math. You're making a 15-second animation that's 24 frames a second. What's 24 times 15? 360. There's 360 separate image files that are going to be created. If you just put this on your desktop, it's just going to be files everywhere. So put it in a folder. I'll show you. There's one additional step that we have to do. So the rendering side isn't so bad. Okay, Modo is going to take care of the rendering. So let's just do, let's do Pat's chain. And I want to make a new folder on my desktop. I'll also call this Pat's apps, Pat's chain. There we go. And you can do PNG. That's fine. For something like this, yeah, that's fine. PNG, tips, targets, PNGs. I'll do JPEG just because it's quick. There we go. And the moment I hit OK, boom, I'm rendering now. And it's going to render each frame as it would normally render each frame. Okay? And it's just going to cycle through, and it's going to chew through all these frames in a timely manner. This is going to take probably 5 minutes or so to render. I actually kind of want us to sit and watch this for a second. I'm going to talk, or we all can talk while it renders. But I want.
15 seconds worth right here?
This is only 24 frames worth, so we're not going to be here for very long. Okay. So I want to show you the process of working with these frames in a program called After Effects. Austin had the question, how do we watch it, right? Well, we have to incorporate other professional software into the mix. Since we're in the advanced animation class, we're going to start to incorporate After Effects into a couple of things that we're going to do. Out there in the... Say again? It doesn't matter. You can do this in After Effects version 1. You really can. Okay, this isn't anything basic. This isn't going to be an After Effects level, this isn't going to be an After Effects course. We're not going to talk about how to do effects and motion graphics, but we do need to use After Effects to take this image sequence and make a QuickTime movie for us. Okay? It's an extra step that's really invaluable. As a kind of a reminder, I've also created a video that completely steps you through this process. So if you've never used After Effects before, there's a tutorial on renderography that shows you exactly how to do this. It's really easy. Once you do it a couple times, you'll see how easy it really is. Oh, we're almost done.
Just for workflow, obviously you can't always do it, but do you usually leave a whole, is it the smart thing to do is leave a whole day free for render only, get your stuff done?
Get your stuff done as early as you can. The render process is something that you can't speed up.
What's the longest, a lot of these graduation projects, just on average, for final?
The final is going to take a while to render because your final is going to be a sequence. It's going to be a small little short film. And depending on the complexity of your materials and textures, it could take some time to render. Some of the examples that I showed you last week took a number of days to render. As we get closer to our final project, I want to start talking about production scheduling ideas and techniques, because you need to be thinking, at the initial creation stage of any project, you need to be thinking about how it's going to render, okay? And you need to build that estimate of render time into your production schedule, and we plan backwards. If it's due on, December 19th, you want to give yourself a good week to render, right? So that means the final animation has to be due by December 12th, okay? And in order to get to final animation, the rough pass of your entire sequence needs to be done by, December 5th. So stuff like that. We'll get to that later, though. We're done. Okay. Let's check out what's physically gone on. Here's my folder on my desktop. Pat's chain. And you can see exactly what was created. This is an image sequence. Each one of my frames has been saved into a dedicated file now. They're all JPEGs. And if I just hit the space bar, do a little quick preview, there it is. And if I hold the arrow key down, there's my animation, okay? This is not an acceptable alternative to previewing your animation in After Effects. I see people in the lab doing this all the time. Instead of the 2 extra minutes it takes to bring this into After Effects, they'll just be sitting there at their machine holding this space bar, as it cruises. Anyways, all right. So there's our image sequence. There's a lot of them. You're going to get a lot of files, okay? A lot of files. They're going to append the file name of your image sequence with a frame number. So the first one, it says output 0000. That's frame 0. Okay? And this bottom one down here, that's frame 24. Okay? Much later on in the semester, I'm going to show you how to change that setting to change the name of the file that's created. Okay? Because at times, you don't want it to be Pat's chain final color output 0024. You want it to be named something different, and I'll show you how to make that adjustment. Until then, let's just jump into After Effects really fast. Now, I mentioned before, that you can use any version of After Effects. We have After Effects CC, Creative Cloud, and all the machines in this lab and over in the design lab. I'm actually on CS6 still, but you can do this in like version 2 of After Effects. So this isn't anything high tech. Here's my icon. Your icon, like 10% different from what this is. If you click on After Effects and launch the app, we can compile this image or this image sequence into a QuickTime movie. Yeah?
So we're going to be using After Effects for our rendering animation.
Yeah. So the last step before you turn this in is the compilation of this image sequence into a QuickTime movie.
Doesn't matter if you have Modo.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. After Effects is an old program. It's kind of a beast, okay? It takes a while to load. This is not uncommon. Just give it a second to do its thing, all right? Here we go, here we go, here we go. Welcome to After Effects, okay? Now, as I mentioned, this is not an After Effects class. I'm going to show you, the only thing that I'm going to show you is how to compile image sequences into QuickTime movies. That's the extent of what we're going to go over today. In the upper left-hand corner, we have a bin. And this is where we're going to import our image sequence into After Effects, okay? Let's do File, Import, File. Now you need to navigate to your computer, navigate on your computer to where you're saving or where you saved your image sequence. And here's the thing that people do, and I need to jump up and down about this. This is the most important step in the entire process. For image sequences, select the first file only. Don't select them all. Select the first one. Okay? Check it out. When I select frame 0 in my image sequence, After Effects is pretty smart. And down here at the bottom, check it out. It's already scanned the contents of that entire folder, and it's made an assumption that each one of these files is a frame in a sequence. Okay? And it's saying, hey, I'm recognizing this as a sequence, as a JPEG sequence. Is that correct? The check mark on says, yes, that's correct. And when you hit open, watch what happens. You hit open, boom. You get one file in your bin. If you want, you can double click on it, and you can kind of scrub through your timeline to get a better understanding of what it looks like. Okay? I believe you can even tap the space bar to kind of get a preview of your animation. Okay? It's not necessarily a real-time preview. After Effects does a very bad job of giving you a real-time preview. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of the interface, it's telling you the frame rate that it's currently showing this animation. So I'm only getting what, 13, 12, 10, 12 frames per second. So it's not real time. Okay. Okay. Oops. All right. Question.
What if you wanted the background to be transparent?
If you wanted the background to be transparent, so you can composite your chain onto something else, render this out as like a TIFF, okay? That will give you the options of making that background more transparent. We'll talk about that in the future. I think for this project and for kind of the next couple projects, render all your assignments as JPEG sequences, okay? JPEG sequences. That would be good.
PNG though, when it starts up, right?
Say again?
It's defaulted to PNG when you first select render.
It may be defaulted to PNG, okay? All right, so the thing that we got to do in this, it's pretty easy actually, and I only discovered this easy way recently. I'd been infusing a couple extra steps, but check it out. When you start After Effects, you're basically going to get access to two things initially. You get your bin up here, which is where your file is going to reside, and then right down below, check it out, there's a tab here called the render queue. Now, I know we just finished rendering this for Modo. Well, we're going to have to render this again, okay? And this final render is going to get it into that QuickTime movie format that we want to use when we submit to the Dropbox, okay? So check it out. If you simply grab your image sequence and drag it down into your render queue and let go, you're good to go, okay? And what you need to do is just that easy. Drag it from your bin down there. You only have to do it once, but there is two things that we need to change down in your render queue, okay? This little word, lossless, drives the quality. what we want to do is simply use a preset by clicking on the arrow and do H.264. Okay? It's a great, great preset to use. It's going to retain almost 100% of the image quality while maintaining a pretty reasonable file size for this QuickTime movie. And then output 2, whenever you see yellow text with a dotted underline in After Effects, that's basically telling you, hey, I can be changed. I'm a user-defined field. So to give it, you want to make sure that you click on this so that you can give it a new name and a location where it's going to be saved on your machine. Click on it. And let's just call it Pat's Chain. Pat's Chain. The format's going to be MP4, which is fine. I'm going to save it on my desktop. Only you know where you saved your stuff, okay? I don't know where, if you come to me and say, Pat, I don't know where I rendered it, I'm going to say, that sucks to be you, okay? Because I don't know where you rendered it either. I really don't. I don't know, I don't know where you saved your stuff. Now the final thing, once you change the output module to the H.264 preset, and you change the output to whatever you want to name your file and wherever you want to save it, the final thing is to hit the render button. Okay? You'll get a little progress bar. There it goes. You'll get a nice little chime. It'll go bring when it means it's done. Okay? I have my volume turned off, which is why you didn't hear it. And now let's hide After Effects, and there it is. There's my MP4. There's my QuickTime movie that I just created. I can open it up and play my animation. Okay? Now there is a considerable difference in quality between the one that I rendered in a minute, that don't do this ever, and the full-blown render that I compiled in After Effects. Okay? It's really not that bad, but an extra step nonetheless. Okay? Questions? This is how we do it out there in the real world. It really is. I saw a really amazing article. What was it, in the 3D World or something? There's a I've forgotten the name of the studio. It's a studio over in Holland, I think, that's using Modo as their primary animation and rendering package for an amusement park ride over in Europe somewhere. And I kind of got the feeling it was like it was like one of the Transformers ride at Universal Studios down in SoCal. From what I read, I was like, this kind of feels like that, right? Where you sit in a car and there's a screen in front of you and your car moves around and it's kind of fun. Anyways, they're using Modo for the entirety of their production process. And one of the things they drew focus to was the importance of rendering an image sequence. Because they said, given their production schedule, they really didn't have the ability to go and re-render things if there was a mistake. So what they would do, if there was a render error, they'd go in and they'd just like mask it out, or they'd paint over it in After Effects. Instead of re-rendering it, they just fix the image that they have, okay? So it's a big, big benefit to work within this image sequence world, because not everything requires a re-render. Some things you can just fix in an image editing application like After Effects. Make sense?
Makes sense.
All right. Questions? As a reminder, everything that we've talked about today is on Renderography. I know my live stream failed to a certain degree. For that, I do apologize, and I will resolve and fix that by next week. So those 3 videos right there cover everything, and I mean everything that we've talked about in detail. Questions? Be good? It goes over the locators too. The creating parent-child relationships in Modo, I believe that one's quite long, and it goes over the entire rigging step and process for the chain. I think in the video I only rig like the first 2 links. I don't do all 10, but it's enough to kind of get to understand the principle. Okay? Everyone good? Good luck. We'll see you next week. I do.
Does 701 use more resources?
Not really. Not really.
And when you go to import all the sequences into After Effects, you only select the first video.
The first one, yeah.
And it'll automatically
Yep.
take them all out.
You got it.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I know. That's the landmine that people often step on.
Yeah.
Is they try to grab them all.
Well, that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah.
If you hadn't said that.
Just select that first one.
Just the first one.
Just the first one.
It just knows to look for the rest of it.
It's a pretty smart program.
How does that work?
It's just smart. It knows how to do it. I don't know how it does it. It's just it knows.
All our technology is getting smarter.
It is. It is. That's great. Katie, what's up?
All my little locators are in the right place. See? Except for this one, which is down there. And I'm trying to unparent, like.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you did. Well, did that just work?
Just drag the whole thing down.
Or what I would do is I'd grab number 2 and drag number 2 out. Yeah. Let's see that. There it is. Now you've unparented both of those guys.
It's still under there.
You are correct. Okay, drag it. Here's what sometimes I find that dragging down to the bottom, I can see what's going on. Now, before you let go with your mouse, drag down. Now move your mouse cursor to the left. Oops. Other left. Yeah. So, okay, drag up then. Drag up. Drag up there it is. Now it's unparented. Yeah.
Now I can just.
Yep. Now you can fix it.
Okay.
And don't forget to reset.
And also, is this backwards compatible? Because I can't figure out how to get 701. I haven't gotten it either.
Yeah, it is backwards compatible. Everything that we're talking about, for the next month is 601 specific. You know, you haven't gotten 701. Is it because your license has expired or?
No, I paid for the permanent license, but that's not available on the site anymore. So I'm assuming that it won't let me upgrade.
Yeah. So you paid for the permanent license, the permanent educational license.
Exactly.
Okay, I think I know what happened. I think when you buy the permanent education license, you buy just that version. So you bought just the 601.
So now what?
Yeah. You buy the permanent 701.
Do I
Yeah.
have to, because there's no more permanent version. It's only.
I know, that's something they changed. Yeah.
So not only did I pay for it,
Yeah.
I have to buy the new one over and over and over again.
For a year. It's a year subscription. So it's not ideal. I was really kind of bummed when I saw them remove the permanent option for ed licenses. They really want you to do the subscription model now.
Everyone wants to do subscription.
Then you get the updates. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's 150, I think. Yeah. 150. Yeah.
It's becoming industry standard now that everybody's wanting subscription.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's uncomfortable for us because we're right in the middle of the transition. For anyone that's any new subscriber, that's all they're ever going to know. We know the days gone by when it was different, so our perspective on the issues is slightly separate.
I'm never upgrading my Photoshop again.
Yeah, I hear you. I know people that are like, no, this CS6 is the last version of Photoshop I'm going to own because the CC stuff is interesting.
CC, the next step.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, there's good things in there, but is it worth? Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. To be honest with you, as you just saw, I haven't even installed CC on my laptop yet. I have access to it from the school, but there's not enough in there for me to really warrant.
Start it here and then finish it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can start it here. You'll get a little message that says, "Oh, hold on, hold on a sec. Something went wrong, or something's weird, or something like that."
Weird might happen. You're using some futuristic version.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, it really says that in the pop-up. Yeah.
Because I've already tried it.
Yeah, it works though. It'll work.
Like in the future, when you want to look at your video stream, it's on D2L. Where would it be? Like
Oh, I wasn't planning on putting it on D2L, but I can.
well,
I can't.
Where do you want to look at it?
Huh?
In the future, where do you going to look at it?
It'll be on renderography, or you can just go to my YouTube channel directly. It'll be on there.
I was going to ask you, because of my situation, can I turn in my homework before class?
And directly to me.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yep, because you're not going to get access to D2L
Until
they
I'm
kick you in.
enrolled.
Yeah.
So, I was
like this
Uh-huh.
before. So I tried. This is a mother, set
That's
on
the top one,
right.
yep.
And then I drag here.
Yep.
And then these are so it's okay to.
Yeah, in this process,
Yeah.
you're going to kind of break your hierarchy apart,
Okay.
and then you'll have to rebuild it.
How? Let me do.
Yep. 3 goes there,
And then the 4 is there, and the
4, and
like
then,
that. 5,
okay. Collapse all of these guys. Just close their arrow.
Okay.
There we go. Yep. Oops. Okay, now you're basically going to parent all of the locators.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So
like
you kind
this?
of you got it. So you kind of break it apart and then you rebuild it again. And then there's your hierarchy. Should work now. Yeah, I noticed. Thank you for reminding me. Let me stop it real quick.